So I'm going to get right into it. A few weeks back, I reached out to Coach Conti, and we discussed having a little interview. And the reason we're here today is because we're having this 40-year reunion of Big Red football, and in classic Coach Conti fashion, you responded to me and said, yes, I'll do it. And I asked you, are there any questions that were going to be off the table? And the classic Conti line was, I trust you will do your homework. 7 simple words to me that motivated me, challenged me, made me think. So then that created the deep dive into Coach Conti. He's the oldest of 6 kids. I'm going to go over some comments and statements that your sisters and brothers have given me for this. But before I go into that, I think that what I've gained, the knowledge I gained about who Coach George Conti is, just made sense for everything else that I knew. But there was a sense of the overall sentiment from the family was a sense of pride, admiration, appreciation, and love. So let's start with Maureen the Queen. That was her nickname, right?
It was her nickname, and it's changed to the Heiress now.
Okay, all right. She didn't tell me that part. She said you were a very, very good student, honor roll. She said it must have come easy to him because your dad kept on yelling at you and saying, where are the books? One word Maureen used to describe, and by the way, when I asked them to give me one word, it was one word long sentence because they had difficulties to do this. So one word to describe Coach Conti, your brother. Manipulating and charming. A statement. Seeing you coach on the field, she stated, that is the perfect place for you. Commander-in-Chief. Kathy. One word to describe you. Complex. Romantic, sensitive, but tough. The martyr, she called you. The martyr. If someone asked me, who would I want to be in a foxhole with? It would be George. They're pretty strong statements. We'll get to how you feel about them in a second. Karen, who I believe you may have been the closest with as far as sisters, at least that's what the other 2 say. One word, motivator. Played lots of games with me, psychological tricks to me and my younger siblings. You would always make things competitive between the 2 or 3. And you actually wrote a college paper on it regarding winning, losing, sensitivity to it, aggression. Do you still have that paper by any chance?
No, but it sounds like something I would write about.
Do you remember writing a paper like that?
No, I
about
don't.
That? Okay, they do. They do, for sure. Michael, your oldest younger brother. One word, charisma and motivator. And his statement was, I played for the great Vic Caboo, but I'd rather have played for George at Ocean. And Robert, a.k.a. Turtle. How did that come about, by the way?
I think I had him convinced that he was hatched as opposed to being born from turtle eggs.
Okay. Did he look like a turtle?
No, he didn't.
No.
He just looked like a baby.
Yeah, he looked like a baby. Okay. One word, motivator. He looked up to you. He wanted to be you. But he couldn't. Those are his words. I couldn't do what George did, but I wanted to be him. I looked at him. He was my idol. I wanted to be him. In retrospect, he says, I should have coached with him. I asked him who the best coach in the Shore was, because he's played with some of the coaches. He's coached with some of the coaches. He said George was by far, hands down, the best coach. Not because he's my brother, by far the best coach. He did more with what he had than any other coach could have or would have done. I guess we didn't really have that much talent. He also attributes the family name as a football name because of what George's hard work, dedication to the sport. I appreciate the hard work it takes to do that. And then his final remarks to me was, George might have been bigger, but I was stronger and better looking. So hearing these, and I know I spoke a lot on that, but I needed to get those kind of comments. And by the way, the discussions were longer, just way too much for all of this. But how does that make you feel, hearing your siblings talk about you in this bigger than life, godlike, Herculean type of image they had of you?
Well, actually, it makes me feel a little disappointed in myself because I really never took the time to include them as much as I would have liked to in some way, and spend more time with them. It seemed like this football thing had me pretty much tied up and preoccupied. And I don't know if it was narcissistic or just the competitive nature I had with all those that were coming at me on the football field. But I had put my family pretty much on the shelf, including my wife and my own children, let alone my siblings, in that I miss time with them. And the fact that they have kind words to say and basically probably forgive me for that because they knew what it took to do what we did here makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I think, we always struggle with this thing, time, Coach, and it keeps ticking. You never get it back. It's probably the most precious thing that we have, and we'll get to that about not wasting it. So moving away from your early childhood years and your siblings, I'm going to go to your family for a second. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say June Conti?
Loyal and very, very giving. And the best assistant coach I ever had.
That's pretty deep. Do you think any of this Big Red football, George Conti, is any of this possible without that woman by your side?
Definitely not, because she was there all the time, because there were some things that were a little bit unorthodox going on to resurrect our program here. And she stood by me and sort of was the support I needed at the time. Whether she believed what I was doing or not, she was there. So I don't think I could have done it without her. Now, I do know of coaches that didn't have the support of their spouses, and they weren't as successful as I was able to be as a result.
What do you think about when I say Tina Conti, your daughter?
Well, unfortunately for Tina, she's more like me than any of the kids or my siblings or anything else. But I think beautiful, intelligent, dynamic, on the move all the time, tremendous energy, and probably the best compliment I could give her was that she could have played for us.
It's funny that you say that because the preparation of all this and talking to her and talking to other people, that's a recurring theme. I wish I could have played for you. So knowing how she is as a person, what do you think, how do you think she would have fared on the Big Red team? Could she have been our kicker or middle linebacker?
No, she was strictly a skilled position player.
Okay.
Great speed, tremendous acceleration. Probably in today's offenses, she would have probably been a slot receiver.
Very good. Very good. I'm going to get to Georgie in a second, but I have to go to Eddie first, and then it all ties in, and you'll understand. So I spoke with Eddie in preparation to this, and one of the most fascinating things that he said to me was, "You never spoke football at home, ever." He doesn't remember ever talking about it. He doesn't know what the hell you guys talked about, but he remembered driving to school with you in the car, in the truck. Never remembered a lick of football at home. Was that on purpose? Did you have more important things to talk about? Did you feel like you needed to give him a little bit of space to recuperate and not feel that pressure all the time? Is that something that happened to you when you were a kid? Because Coach Senior was also a coach. Tell me why no football at home.
Well, I am very much like my father was. And no, we didn't talk endlessly about football. We did watch a lot together, my dad and I. And of course, I followed him as a water boy. I went to so many of his practices when I was in elementary school. With Eddie, I think we didn't have to talk about it. He was there, he was part of it, and I always told him, I think the most we talked about football-wise was at a very early age, I'd say at about 4 or 5 years old, I told him, "You're going to be my running quarterback." In fact, I was a big Dallas Cowboy fan at the time, and I had bought a watch which had the Dallas logo, and it had a little second hand, which was a little runner running around. And I would show him that, and I say, "This is going to be you. You're going to be my running quarterback." And probably that was the extent of it, as opposed to, in addition to, I should say, to watching TV and pointing out things. But I never had to sit down with him and talk about X's and O's and the things we got into a little bit later, but everything was confined to the practice field and game time.
Right.
Nothing came back to the house.
Right.
Nothing was at the house prior to the game. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it wasn't necessary because he was in lockstep with me with whatever we were doing.
That is surprising to me, because I know if my dad was the coach, he'd be right in my face the whole time. A little bit of school of hard knocks. So I asked Eddie one word to describe your dad. Leader. Great leader of men, to quote it. And in continuation of that, he said, and I've been through the college ranks, I've been around professional coaches, and there's not one person, not one of them, that came close to the type of leader you were. This isn't even about coaching. This is about being a leader. How does that make you feel?
Well,
and has he ever said that to you?
I think maybe he's shown that more than said it, but It
How does
makes
it make you feel? How does it make you feel to actually hear those words?
well. I'm glad that he feels that about me, and like he said, he's been around a lot of coaches, and it took it took a certain amount of my background as a player and what I went through to develop that leadership skill, the ability to motivate and get youngsters excited about what they were doing in spite of what I put them through. And Eddie was the only kid I coached, and I've coached many hundreds. He's the only player that enjoyed coming to practice. He liked to practice. So he was an anomaly. I marveled at that part of him. So he followed me. He supported me, and nothing was more important to him than I succeed and the team succeeds.
On that note, couple things. He did mention. I asked him what the drive was for him. He was an excellent athlete. He was a great football player. He, not a huge kid, but just the tenacity of a lion. It was just unbelievable. And I had the honor of playing with him and the privilege of playing when he was a sophomore. So I saw him when he wasn't even at his peak. But the things that he was doing as a sophomore was pretty amazing. And he didn't fail to remind me that, because we've been chatting, and I've actually been doing some chatting with some other players from the '93 team. He didn't fail to remind me of the heroic catch he made against Middletown to keep us on an undefeated season to that point. And I said, "Did you throw the football too, Eddie, or did you just catch it?" So we've been having a nice little banter. He misses working out with you and playing for you. So what do you miss about playing football? It's like, I just miss working out with Dad, training with him, and being with him. He misses the whole thing. Most sons and fathers that go through this type of relationship maybe don't have that type of sentiment amongst each other. Maybe they felt it was too hard. Maybe they felt that there was too much pressure put on. Maybe he felt that, whatever it was, it became almost like a rift between the two. And you could probably name tons of coaches and sons who've had that type of relationship. Again, how does that make you feel regarding how he feels about you with that? He misses all of that. And then I'm going to say one other thing. I said, describe your dad. Intelligent, driven, and a fierce competitor. How is that? And again, I'm not sure if he's ever described how he feels to you, but I get goosebumps just listening to, this type of description of you. I have my own description of you, but hearing it from your son's point of view, is pretty special to me. So, how do you, when he says intelligent, driven, fierce competitor, and I miss training with him, how does that make you feel?
Well, that's something that I tried to instill in him, all surrounding hard work and sacrifice. And it's something that I tried to be a part of in terms of dealing with my players. I wanted them to be competitive. I wanted to be in the weight room with them. And I wanted them to try to compete with themselves to get better at what they were doing, whether it was weightlifting or whether it was off season when they were running track. And Eddie was really a spectacular track person. And I made them compete against themselves at a very early stage of their athleticism. I wanted them to feel as though they had the ability to get better because I was doing what I was asking them to do. And I wanted to be the example that they would follow in life. And some of it is rubbed off
Yeah,
on some of you.
I would say. All right, let's kind of lighten it up a little bit for a second. Do you remember the arm wrestling contest between Eddie and you after college? Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember losing definitively, as he says?
If I lost, I put it out of my mind.
He said you lost definitively, and I asked if you wanted a rematch, and he said no, it was definitive. I was like, wow, okay. So who's the best athlete in your family?
I mean, as far as the children, my siblings, my children.
Your kids.
Well, it's really neck and neck with Tina and Eddie. Tina was, of course, the All-American and had the same athletic skills as Eddie did: speed, toughness, intelligence, and leadership. So I would not say Eddie was better than Tina. Eddie was an All-American as well, so they've reached that level, both of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were both the same type of players with the same type of skill set. So I'm going to put them neck and neck. I would never put one above the other.
What do you think Eddie said? Who the best athlete in the family was?
He probably said Tina. Or, no, he could have probably said Georgie, maybe.
So I asked him that, and he said by far Eddie was the best athlete in the family. That's what he said. But then he backed that up by saying Georgie was a fierce competitor, and Tina was just an amazing athlete. But he did say that it was him. I asked him who he thought you were going to say, and he said, "Oh, he's going to say it's me." So, we all need that, confident step, and he definitely has it. So I always thought that was interesting. Who you would pick as the top athlete? Do you want to know who I thought it was?
Yeah.
Tina.
Mm-hmm.
Now I couldn't comment on Georgie because I unfortunately did not have that opportunity to know him. But I love Eddie, and he was a beast. But I just think that Tina was one of those superb athletes. Okay. I'm going to switch directions here away from the family a little bit. And we're going to go towards Ocean Township. And I call this Ocean Township BC, before Christ. I mean Conti. Okay? BC. And that was 1983. But so let's talk about where you were, what you did. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but there is a little bit of a, kind of the thing that we got to go through. So you finish Temple, you go to Keyport first, right? You're a head coach?
I was a head coach at age 23.
Okay,
really
that's pretty
knew
young.
nothing.
That's pretty young.
Youngest coach at the time.
That's pretty amazing. And from there, how long do you stay there?
I stayed there 4 years,
Okay.
2 as an assistant, 2 as a head
Okay.
coach.
And you leave there, then you head over to Toms River South, correct?
Right.
Okay. And that you assisted Ron Signorino?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were there for about a year, 2, 3 years. How long were you there?
I was there for 1 year.
1 year. Okay. And then from there you went to Central Regional.
Yes.
And again, as an assistant under John Gardy, sorry. Yes. And how long were you there for?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay. So from there you go to Asbury Park. And you win yourself a nice 1980 state champion Central Jersey Group 2 championship. What was the climate over there? What was it like when you got there?
Well, they
Were they winners?
They were winners, but they were losers in so many of the important things.
Okay.
They very undisciplined. Over the years, had a great talent, but had problems in school. There was a lot to contend with. the streets. Some of the best players in Asbury were on the streets. And it was difficult. If I can get them to practice, we could win.
Okay.
And that's what we had to face, and that's what we did accomplish. But in school, I never had a problem with the kids. The kids were eager to win. They did things for me that other coaches couldn't get them to do, and I was grateful for that. And I have only fond memories of my years at Asbury.
And you were only there for about 3 years, 4 years?
I was there. Let me think.
So
now.
80 to 83.
Well,
79 to 83?
78, 79, 80, 81.
Okay.
4 years. 4 years.
Got 4 years. Okay. So you took a little break between coaching from 81 to 83?
I've had a very interesting schedule, one would say, on the way. After Keyport, I had my last year there, my second year as head coach. We had the first winning season, 7-2, in 12 years. And I was eager to learn, and I didn't feel as though I was going to be able to reach my potential at Keyport. And I contacted Ron Signorino. Don't ask me why I
Did
thought
you know him?
I didn't know him, but he was legendary in the Toms River area.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very successful. He was Warren Wolf's main protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Called him. Long story short, he brought me on as an assistant coach. And I learned a lot, but I was very disillusioned. Very disillusioned. It was going from the lowest tier in coaching to, at that time, the A South, the highest tier. And I expected to see so much more in terms of all the intangibles that I taught you guys. And I didn't see it. In fact, I saw the opposite. And I became so disillusioned that I left teaching and coaching for 1 year. And I went with U.S. Steel as a salesman up in Newark. I stayed there for only 1 year, mostly because they were closing down U.S. Steel in Newark and they were moving to Fairfield, Connecticut. I didn't want to move my family to Connecticut.
Right.
We liked where we were. So I then beat the bushes. John Gardy hired me as an assistant at Central Regional and spent 4 years there. And 75, 76, 3 years there. My mistake. Yeah. Spent 3 years with him. He was an excellent coach. His brother Joe Gardy was the head coach at Hofstra and then was for a short time with the Jets. And I picked up an awful lot from him and realized that I miss coaching. I miss working with the kids. I miss teaching. So I was fortunate to get back into the game at Central Regional. Stayed there 3 years. Asbury Park job opened up. And I wanted to be a head coach again and took the Asbury Park job. And the rest is history from there.
So thank you, U.S. Steel, for moving from Newark to Connecticut, because
Right.
then I wouldn't be here with you right now
That's
talking
right.
about all this. And so I
Although you look like a steel worker now.
man,
So
I think I said off camera, I wish I had this size when I played for you. Scott Larkin, who played with me in 91, he also coached the Big Red from 2000 to 2003, says you kept 3 pictures in your office: Vince Lombardi, Tom Landry, and Warren Wolf. What was it about these 3 coaches, the character, that you admired about them?
well, Lombardi, of course, and Tom Landry. And I don't know if Scott is mistaken, but I never had a picture.
Never had Warren Wolf?
Never had Warren
Okay.
Wolf. My father was the third one.
Okay.
He would have been the third one that I would have had up there. Interesting thing about Landry, I coached so much differently than Landry. He was cool, calm, and collected. Very.
You weren't cool, calm, and collected, Coach?
Very professorial, I
Yeah.
would say, and unlike Lombardi, I was a little bit more like in terms of emotion,
Coaching style.
and coaching style. And interesting thing, I mentioned that I was a big fan of the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, my first year as head coach at Ocean, I had the Dallas Star put on our helmets, and Jerry Jones had just taken over the Cowboys, and he fired Landry.
Right.
No more star on the helmet. No more Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
I root against them to this day because of what Jerry Jones did. And Lombardi, I have things that I do that Lombardi did, not only on the field, but off the field.
Right.
And not to get into the religious thing too much, Lombardi went to Mass 7 days a week, and I go to Mass 6 days a week. And I don't go the seventh day because I'm no Vince Lombardi.
Wow.
And that's why I don't go
Wow.
on that seventh day. My father, I'm a lot more like him than either of those other two coaches. My father was let's call him an urger.
An urger.
He would urge
Uh-huh.
and force himself to be the tough guy, to be the hard guy. He never had the benefits of great assistants. And so he had to do all of it. He had to be the Father Flanagan, and he had to be the draconian leader. So I was a little bit more like him.
So now we're going to just come to 1983, and we're going to call this DC, during Conti. It's funny, I say Conti, and I don't need to say anything else. It's basically like you become like a one-word name, like almost like Madonna or the Pope or whatever other person in history you want to talk about. You say Conti, and it's just known. And you weren't known, I guess, before 1983, or you're not as known before 1983. You come to Ocean Township, and I want to understand the environment that the township, the high school, the township is. I want to know what role Principal Atlee, and Jerry Hawslett played in getting you here, and I want to know the month that you actually came to Ocean Township in relationship to where the season started, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, the question is what?
So the question is, what role did Atlee and Hawslett play to get you here? And what was like how was this, like, why Ocean? Like, why did they get you to come here? They were terrible, right? Three games in the last three
I
seasons
think
or something?
they had 7 wins in 4 years.
Right.
Something like that. That number stood out to me.
So why did you want to come to Ocean? Maybe I'll ask you like that.
I'm going to tell you something that sounds maybe a little bit ridiculous. I'm not sure, but I followed Ocean when Jack Ty was the head coach, and he was very successful. And from there, it dropped off to really a dismal time, a dark period in Ocean football. But a couple things. I'll get to Atlee and Hawslett along the way, but
right.
I remember Asbury Park in their heyday under Butch Bruno, and a contemporary of my father's. And they were an excellent program. And Butch was a tough coach. And what happened in Asbury Park, the town, was that there was a period of time where there was a white flight, so to speak. And those people that lived in Asbury Park moved to Ocean Township. And I always thought that it's one of my warped thinking maybe, but it worked out, was that most of those people that went to Asbury and played, the fathers, their sons, moving to Ocean Township, were mostly Italians. And so I said, well, if we have enough Italians, we could win.
I love it. Is that why? And we'll get to the coaching staff. But I read the names of the coaching staff: Galatro, Pagano, De Aloia, Marticelli, Christopher. Parker's the only one who's not Italian in that initial. So you surrounded yourself with Italians. Was that just happenstance, or?
I think that was just luck.
Luck. Okay.
Yeah.
So you get to Ocean Township. What are the state of what is going on in Ocean Township when you come here? And what month was it, by the way? Do you remember what month you came?
Well, it had to be.
Was it springtime? Was it?
It had to be going toward the end of the school year, because
in '83.
I'll tell you my memory of being introduced to the team, the upcoming team. But anyway, speaking of Atlee, he was the principal,
right?
And he was not a guy into athletics, so he just went along with the athletic director's recommendation.
And that was Hoslet at the time.
And that was Jerry Hoslet.
Right. The kind hog, right? The kind hog.
The kind hog.
The kind hog.
He was the guy that actually was responsible for me being hired.
Right.
And Bob Mahan, speaking of administrators now, Bob Mahan was the superintendent at the time. And I think Bob Mahan had a part of him that admired one of the coaches, and I forget his name, from Manasquan. It wasn't Vic Caboo. It was one of the guys before Vic. And I think Jerry Hoslet had to go out of his way to get me past the superintendent. But Jerry Hoslet was an Asbury Park graduate.
Okay.
Which he still had a soft spot in his heart for Asbury Park, and he saw that what we accomplished at Asbury, which at the time, the famous track coach there, Nick Murley, came up to me and said after the state championship, is that we had performed a minor miracle because things were not easy there. Right. They were not easy at all. So that explains Atlee did not have a role.
He didn't.
He was just a rubber stamp.
Gotcha.
Hoslet had the background with Asbury and had followed my career at Asbury. And then Bob Mahan went along with the recommendation. But Bob Mahan, speaking of administrators, none of what we see here as the Big Red football program would have been possible without him.
That's good. So you're now here. I'll get to the coaches first, and then we'll talk about the first meeting with the team. So obviously the first thing you need to do, right, is you need to assemble your coaching staff. And I had a nice long discussion with Coach Galatro because he was already in Ocean Township. He was teaching. He had coached for a little bit as an assistant. He had the untimely death of his daughter. He stepped away. He was always interested in coaching. He always wanted to be a head coach, he told me. But then after his daughter's passing, he said, "There's just no way I can do it." So in the meantime, they're courting Coach Conti to come to Ocean. They reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you want to coach?" He's like, "Absolutely not. I'm not going to coach." He goes, "But I will be an assistant coach if you get someone in here who knows what the hell they're doing." How do you know How do you know? How are you picking these people? Is Galatro falling in your lap? The great Ayatollah of defense?
That's a great way of putting it. Did he fall in my lap? And I would say, yes, he did. Now, we did cross paths because my Asbury team would scrimmage against the Ocean team. And at that time, Billy was coaching defense. And we got to say a few words back and forth, nothing much, but there was really no other connection than our
But you knew each other.
But we knew each other, and certainly he was a veteran coach and knew the lay of the land, so to speak, better than anybody else that would have been on the staff. I was just fortunate that I had a very frank meeting with each of the returning coaches.
How'd that go?
Well, I made it as bleak and austere as I could make it, telling them that what they were about to enter into was going to be difficult for everybody, mostly the players, but for us too, as coaches, because I knew what it was going to take to turn the thing around. And I don't think he was as impressed as he was maybe determined to be part of it if it did get turned around. And he stuck with it. And from him, I got his recommendation to bring on Tom Pagano. And that
The
was
great hog.
the great, no, he was the famous
The
hog.
famous hog. Okay. A lot of hogs.
Yeah.
A lot of hogs.
But Billy was very, very instrumental. He was my whole background as far as OSHA was concerned. I mean, I could tell you stories of decisions he made for me that really didn't sit well with me, but I deferred to his wisdom and judgment.
It's funny that you bring that up because in my discussion with him, I asked him, did the Sultan have complete autonomy onto how to run the defense and the scheme and all that? And he was very, very clear with me. And he said, make no mistake that this was Connie's team. We would come together at the beginning of the week. We'd create a game plan. I would execute it. But if I went down, if I dropped or I couldn't make the game, make no mistake, George knew everything that there was about the defense, what to run, when to run it. So the mutual respect, I would imagine, right? You're going into war, you're going into battle. You have your defensive coach. I mean, defense wins games, doesn't it? It wins championships, doesn't it?
Many times.
So we have this situation where we have these two very strong Italian men, right? And fire. There's fire and fire there. I'm sure you know how Galatro it gets fired up. There's fire there, and I've seen you get fired up on the sidelines. So I would imagine there were times where there was tension, but it worked. It worked, and I have to believe that there was trust and respect, because without those two things, you definitely can't go to war with someone. So I believe Galatro was your guy. When I look at it from a historical perspective, there was always the guy. Well, he was the guy. Then there's Pagano, who he said amazing things about. I can't even say it on this podcast because there was a lot of, unless you can bleep things out. But he basically said he was the man. He would make changes on the line that were impressive on the go. He'd be up in the box, come down, tell us what to do, and the changes were always immaculate. Deloya, am I saying that right? Deloya. I don't know him. I didn't know him. He was only there for a year. Marticelli is just, he was the glue, he said. Coach Galaccio said he was the glue that held everyone together. Christopher. 2 words on Christopher. Tell me, what's the first thing you think about when you think of Coach Christopher?
An unlikely type, but willing to learn, and a former Asbury Park football player. And to look at him, you would not know that. You would not think that. And yet, he hung in here with the rest of us. He was temperament-wise not like many of us, but Georgie Christopher was a loyal soldier.
Yeah. So now you have this Herculean challenge in front of you. You got the 1983 Big Red Spartans. You're not even the Big Red Spartans right now. You're just coming into town, and what are you doing? Like, what's the game plan? What's the first thing you do to now change the mentality from losers? I mean, we were losers, right?
Yeah,
losers. And not even on the field. It may have been a systemic issue that was in the town. Maybe too much food in our fridge.
right.
Maybe we had nice homes. Maybe we were coddled. Maybe a million different things.
The house was
right?
too warm.
The house
The bed
too
was
warm.
too soft.
Exactly. So you need to come into Ocean Township and you need to strip, almost like a reset. Like you're going to the Marines and everyone is the same, and you go through basic training and you have to strip everyone of their dignity almost and then build them up.
That's an interesting comment. Strip them of their dignity. Well, I probably was pretty good at that,
But it wasn't just the stripping of the dignity that you did. It was what you did after. How are you is this coming to you as you're doing it? Or have you thought about this? Did you come in saying, I'm going to paint the town red? Was there like a piece of paper that you wrote down, this is what I'm doing, the first thing I'm doing? Or are you so on the fly where things are popping in your heads and you're just doing it?
well, we got to go back.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do it right, you have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
We had played Asbury. My Asbury team had played the last game we played against Ocean was somewhat memorable, and I think Jimmy Loizos, a very good player for the Ocean team, Ocean program, probably can tell the story best. We were heavy underdogs against Ocean. Carmen Magnato was the head coach. He had a very good team, talent-wise. And with 6 seconds left, we scored to beat them. It was a huge upset at the time. And I would then, after that, come to the school to pick up films, exchange films with Carmen. And I noticed certain things in driving into the school parking lot. And it was at the bus port where I picked up the film. And I noticed certain things. I noticed that the letter jackets, some were blue with white sleeves, some were red with white sleeves, some were red with blue sleeves, but there was no real color. There was nothing to identify them color-wise. And in addition to that, I noticed that everybody was smoking in the busport.
The athletes.
I don't know if they
You
were
don't know. They were wearing Letterman jackets.
Right,
Okay.
right. And it bothered me. Anyway, it was
Why
in the
did it
back.
bother you? You weren't even remotely thinking.
Wasn't I
it just
had
bothered
no,
you.
I had nothing.
There was you had no vested interest.
No vested
Right.
interest.
But
right.
it bothered you. You noticed it and it bothered you.
I noticed it and it bothered me. And then there was the reputation. I mean, this team should have wiped the field with us. Size, speed, they were tough. But the reputation of Ocean was soft, very soft. And that's why they were losing. Obviously, there were not demands made on them that would make them tougher, a program that you would respect and fear. So it goes back to that one day when I came to pick up films that I realized, there's something missing here. So when I got the job, I met with the returning players. And I met with them in the auditorium. And they may have filled up maybe 2.5 rows. There might have been 25 kids there at the most. Some of them had no shirts on. And I went home that night and I told my wife, I said, I may have just committed career suicide by accepting this job.
You didn't realize.
Because what I saw in the auditorium was really a ragtag looking group. I mean, I don't think there was a muscle that you could find in a whole 25 of them. I mean, nobody was built or anything. So you mentioned the term strip them of their dignity. Well, I knew from Frankie Marticelli, who happened to be a neighbor of mine, and grew up lifting weights in my cellar.
At 16, he told me.
At Shark River Hills. I learned from Frankie that they always had new uniforms, new jerseys. They had special helmets for the offense and the special helmets for the defense. And their practice jerseys were as nice as some other teams' game jerseys. One of the first things I did at practice, I told them in a meeting, you're to come to practice with the most ragged shirt that you could find. I want it to be dirty, ripped, horrible. And that was the shirt that they would wear every day at practice.
Jersey-wise.
I stripped them of every amenity that there was.
How about water?
Right away. Well,
would you get water breaks at that time?
Water, well, it was still at the time where water was basically a no-no.
Right, yeah.
Our trainer, Dr. Rouge, of course, managed to get enough water to them.
God rest his soul, yes.
I used to make believe I was upset with that, but I really wasn't. It would hold up practice for 2 minutes is the part that upset me.
Practice was long enough.
Not that you were still alive.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But anyway,
so you really made things.
I made things as difficult as I could, especially at practice time. We'd come out with a schedule every day, and I'd pin it up on the board. And inevitably, the schedule ended at 6 o'clock. That was a pipe dream.
I don't remember getting home before 8.
Practice ended when I was satisfied we won practice that day.
Winning practice, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, I could honestly say in all my years at Ocean, we had lost one practice.
Do you remember it?
I remember it. And I can't go into detail about it.
It's all right.
But I remember telling Billy Galatro, I said, Billy, if we have another practice like this again, we're going to get destroyed.
And this was 83. This is 1983?
No, this was later. This was
Okay.
86. This was 86.
Okay. All right.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I was winning practice was important to me.
It's great.
And I never wanted to lose a practice. But anyway, practices never ended at 6 o'clock. The only way I realized that we might be going overboard was all the beeping of horns in the parking lot adjacent to the field. And those were parents that the kids told practice will be over at 6. Be there to pick me up. Well, they were there, like you said,
Yeah.
minimum at 8.
Right. Did the parents probably learned really quickly that it's not ending at 6.
They did stop beeping after a while.
So that brings me to a couple of different. So you kind of formalize this color, right? And was red just because it was part of it, or did you like the color red? Did you think red had some sort of like power to it?
It's the belief is that red is a violent color.
Yeah.
That's the belief, but that really didn't have anything to do with my thinking.
Okay.
My thinking came from other teams. For instance, successful programs, the Big Blue at Manasquan, the Green Wave at Long Branch, the Green Dragons at Brick.
Mm.
Color was important. And red was the only color really available to me.
Okay.
And that is where I came up with the color red.
So that's red, and then we were the Spartans. We were the Ocean Township Spartans prior to your coming to Ocean Township, and you switch it. You switch it to a call of arms. Big Red Spartans. Big Red Spartans. And then everything kind of unfolds from there. Love Your Red, Big Red Spartans, Big Red Tradition, Big Red everything. The town becomes Big Red.
It embraced.
It embraced Big Red. Ocean Township Spartans is now Big Red Spartans. I mean, how does that? How do you do that with like you basically flip the switch?
You do it with one thing: winning.
Okay.
That's how you do it. And we were fortunate enough to go in 83, 9-2, and we captured the imagination of the town. But it wasn't without its costs. There was a great backlash by people that all of a sudden thought that their color was blue. Well, where has that been? Then there were backlash from people that there wasn't enough emphasis on the Spartan.
Right.
Former teachers that were students back then gave me a real hard time with that.
But you never dropped
No.
the Spartans. It just became Ocean Township Big Red Spartans.
I never emphasized the Spartan part, and that
Yeah, you did.
was attached.
You trained us like Spartans.
Well,
It was a very, very
true.
regimented. I mean,
But
no other mascot would have fit
right.
your style of training and kind of emphasis on what you thought was strong. I don't think probably, and this is my opinion, because they didn't go through it, they didn't understand that we were being trained as Spartans.
It's a funny story. I don't know if I should even bring this up. It's rather ghastly, but the term Spartan to me, in my readings I always had this militaristic mindset. In fact, I've always was disappointed that I never had to serve in the military. But that's another story because
Well, your dad was a decorated war hero.
my father was. He won the Distinguished Flying
Right.
Cross. At the time, I was in college and they were pulling everybody out. And
Right.
at the time, they had a lottery and they threw your birth date in there. And if your birth date was pulled, the first one, you were going to Vietnam.
Wow.
If you were pulled anywhere between 100 and 120 birth dates, you were going.
Wow.
120 to 240, 50-50 chance. 240 to 365, you were safe. Now, my birth date was the last number picked. So there was no chance that I was going to Vietnam. I probably wouldn't have gone anyway because I had a very, very bad knee. But I always regretted the fact that I didn't get the chance to serve, because at that time in 1965, nobody knew how bad it was.
Right.
So we were playing cards at a table like this, and we had a couple of the college kids in the dorm room, and they were glued to the TV. We were playing cards. We could care less.
Right.
If we went, we'll go. We'll get out of school. Yeah. Anyway, that's a military thing. But I read where there were 3 Spartans, guards, on duty. And of course, they were hungry. It was in wartime in Sparta, and they were on guard duty, and they didn't have enough to eat for a long time. And a fox had run by them. One of the guards went after the fox, killed it, or did not kill it, captured it,
right,
with the intention that they would eat it at some point. And along comes the captain of the guard, and he's questioning them. Somebody wasn't where they were supposed to be. And the fox, the guard that caught the fox, had put it under his tunic. And the fox clawed his stomach completely out. The guard never moved.
Wow.
Never, you being a Greek, you can appreciate
Oh,
this.
sure can.
Comes with my great fondness for Greeks,
Right,
by the way.
Right.
But clawed his stomach out. The captain was satisfied with his question, walked away. The guard collapsed dead. So that's my idea of a Spartan.
Pretty tough, huh?
Yeah, pretty tough.
So you don't really take the Spartan away. You really incorporate Spartan life and Spartan training. In 1983, you're taking on this team. What do you think where do you think this is? And I have a question from Steve Brown, captain of 1983 football team. Coach, at the beginning of the season, what did you think the record would be? And did you think that the team could actually win?
Well, after that meeting, I was concerned that I'd have a job after the first season, and I didn't have high hopes for them.
So you didn't think they were going to win?
I really didn't know what I had. Just from looking at them, I could see I didn't have much.
Okay.
I didn't have numbers. I didn't have size. As far as skills were concerned, I didn't know if I had a quarterback. I didn't know what kind of speed I had in the backfield. Now, I'm coming from Asbury Park after a state championship in 80 and a state final appearance in 81 with talent.
You had some horses there.
I had a pulling guard, Lewis Henry, that ran the hurdles and ran like a pulling guard now. And they ran at least a 4.5, 4.6 back then, which is like a 4.3 now.
Right.
So I had talent that I had plenty of it, and I know I didn't have that when I was looking at that. So to answer Steve's question, I didn't have high hopes.
Didn't have high hopes.
My only hope was that they would survive what was coming at them.
Right. So that's Steve's question. And then I have another question from Chris Tilton he was 85, and he says your first season at Ocean Township, the starting lineup for both the offense and the defense were really light on the seniors and heavy with juniors and sophomores. He believes that was done on purpose so that the following year the returning group of players would be well versed in the game plan, since the previous 2-year records was a combined 3-15. Were you even hoping for a 500 season that first year, and then pour it on the second year? And then at what point again did you realize that they had a shot at the title?
No, I think.
Or does that just happen? It happened.
It happened the way it
Yeah,
happened.
right.
My expectations that we were going to win, and we were going to figure out ways of winning, even if we didn't have the talent. And I didn't have a great fear of we were going to duplicate the previous teams that Ocean had. I knew we would be better. We would be better.
Right. How did you choose the captains that year? By the way, you don't know anyone. When are the captains chosen that year? It can't be before beach practice like we normally did.
No, it had to be just the personalities I got to know, maybe talking to Galatro, because Galatro really was the only returning varsity coach.
Right. Marto was there, but I don't know if he had coached them.
Was, freshman coach.
Right, right.
So anyway, I was impressed, obviously, with Steve and Chucky.
Do you fear losing? Do you hate losing more than you like winning?
You know, that's an interesting question.
It sure is, isn't it?
But I had a great fear of losing. And that's what drove the practices. And winning was only a relief for me. There was, I hate to say this, but there was very little joy in it because my mind went directly to the next probably day.
Right.
When the staff meeting was going to be 8 hours on a Sunday. 8 hours on a Sunday.
I would probably say right after we sang Bula Bula, the win was already out of the mind.
Absolutely. And that brings up the thoughts of regret that I have. I have many regrets in the way I coached and things that I could have done that I didn't do, that I've seen other coaches be successful while doing that. And, I don't want to belabor that, but to say there was great joy in winning, I think there must have been, but I only remember relief.
So before I get started, I just want to say how honored I am and humbled, nervous I was, prepared to learn from this. The experience has been amazing for me. And, it's just I'm pinching myself. And I've spoken to so many people, and I can tell you right now, they are envious of the position that I'm sitting in right now. So that being said, I just had to get off my chest. Big Red Tradition. That means a lot.
Well, it meant a lot to me, and I think my primary goal, aside from winning, was to establish tradition. Tradition was very, very important to me, and it goes back to when I saw the different letter jackets and, the smoking and the lack of sacrifice, and I wanted to create tradition, and I also wanted to do things that were a little bit different than what other teams were doing. I wanted to have our program stand out because we were doing the heavy lifting, so to speak.
So So where do you start? You come here, you want tradition is a bit. We have no tradition here yet. How do you create tradition in 1 year? How do you create that?
Well, I think certain things had to be established
Okay.
right away. One, we had to have a weight room, and we all had to work together in the weight room, which we did. You know, we had a very, very primitive setup in the portables, and so many memories that go with that. But tradition, working out was going to be part of our tradition. We were going to work harder than any other team. So that's one of the things we did. Of course, the color came about where we would all be wearing red and talking about us being not the Red Spartans, but big Red Spartans. We had to get big, and I think things like the 10 jumping jacks at the end of the game, win or lose.
So
Beach practice was probably the one thing that when my players from Asbury meet my players from Ocean, that is the number one topic.
did beach practice start with your tenure at Asbury Park?
Yes.
And how many days was it?
It was 3 days.
At Asbury as well, when you were at Asbury?
Right on the 7th Avenue boardwalk.
Okay. No, but while you were coaching at Asbury, it was 3 days for the Asbury team.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they never knew what hit them. And I remember Mitch Reeder, one of my tackles, big boy, and running was not his forte. And he came up to me at the end of one of the beach practice. He says, "Coach, I didn't sign up for this."
You left?
No.
Oh.
They all stuck it out.
Okay.
But they never knew what hit them. They were throwing up over the railings, and it was quite a wake-up call for them, as it was for the Ocean team. And I don't think you guys knew what hit you.
Right. Well, here I have
happened.
a quote or a statement / question from Kevin Netterman, who was your captain of 1984 team. So he must have been a junior when you came to Ocean. I said, what were you, this is my question to him, what were you, the team, thinking beach practice was going to be like and what to expect? No, we had no idea what we were in for, but after the first one, we had a feeling that the season was going to be like. But it was well worth it. I will tell you a story. After our first scrimmage against Marlboro, we got blown out, and they had a running back that ran all over us. Coach said nothing at the field. When we got back to got back to Ocean, he told us to go into the gym locker room and express his feelings, and basically tore a locker door off the hinges. That's when we realized he was here for business and expected nothing but success. War cry of the Spartans, Bula Bula. You expected nothing less of your players than you expected of yourself. So the tradition, yes, it's beach practice. Yes, it's the 10 jumping jacks, win, lose, or draw, which I'll get to in a second. But this tradition starts with George Conti. You came up, I mean, it's hard, we cannot, I mean, this is the 300-pound gorilla in the room. You can't say Big Red Football without saying George Conti. He is Big Red Football. You have some, side help to help you along, but this is your mastermind. This is your football legacy. Tell me why. What was the message that you were sending to to the coaches, the players, the opposing players, and your own players, when you made us line up and do 10 jumping jacks, win, lose, or draw? What was that about?
You know, I can't figure out what I was thinking, but I knew it would be something different. It would be an in-your-face type thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted us to be about. We weren't going to back down. We were going to be different. We were going to win. But we were going to be humble. And that was, I knew that we would not be doing jumping jacks after, well, let's put it this way. I knew we would be doing jumping jacks even after a loss. I knew that.
You knew that.
I knew that. So I had no problem doing it after we won. Otherwise, it would have been not only an in-your-face, but look at us now. And I wanted us to be humble. You know, I took exception to singling out anybody. We never had an MVP trophy or anything like that. So it was an idea, and it worked. And they still do it. And
I think the message is very, very clear. We're here to work, whether you beat us up on the field or not. We're still not quitting. We're not quitters. Even though we may have lost this, we've lost this game, this one battle we lost. We're already back at work. We're doing jumping jacks, and we're moving on.
We're proud of who we are.
Yeah, the psychological effect that, again, this is my opinion, going through it, the psychological effect that it had at the end of the game, whether we won or lost, was that's already done. That's done.
Right.
We're doing jumping jacks because we're preparing for the next battle.
Line it up.
Line it up. Line it up.
They knew they were going to hear that.
Those 3 words, line it up, is simple. It's a simple thing, but it's deep in the sense of, you just got your face smashed in or you won, line it up. You just got knocked down, line it up. You just had a bad day, line it up.
At the end of every practice, it was line it up.
Line it up. Line it up. So I don't think people realize that your traditions that you were doing and making and creating had such a, and maybe you don't even realize it, had such a impact on the psyche of the players.
I see that more now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another tradition we had was start time, which I was fond of start time. It's one of the things that made me particularly happy.
Yeah. So let's talk about 2 things on start time. There's a question. Well, there's one question about Bula Bula, and this is from Janet Ernest. She was a cheerleader in 1986. Where did Bula Bula come from? And she still loves it. She still sings it.
Interesting thing about Bula Bula, it was a college from one of the Ivy League schools, I believe.
Yeah, but you changed the words. I looked up that song, and it's different. It's different.
I did I did do the words differently, and we sang it at Asbury.
Okay, same. Okay. Were they upset when you took it and brought it to Ocean? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Do you care?
No.
Good.
And
neither do I.
And Bula Bula was, believe it or not, my high school, St. Benedict's in Newark.
Okay.
Was the
you sang that as well?
School song, but we never sang it as a team.
Okay.
They sang it in school.
Gotcha.
At a pep rally, or in the auditorium. There was a lot of tradition in that school, and I brought it over along with the shift.
Right. From St. Benedict's.
From St. Benedict's.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So we have the jumping jacks, we have beach practice, we have the bula bula. We're going to talk about star time, but before we get to star time, tell me about how before we started the game and before in the pregame where we would come out and we would line up and we would just stare.
The big red stare.
The big red stare. Now I have some conflicting stories on who created it or who named it. So tell me, I mean, you are an intimidating being. You have knowing you, I don't feel intimidated anymore. Maybe not, maybe so a little bit, but you had an intimidating stature. Your arms were huge. Your trap started from somewhere about a quarter inch underneath your ear down to your shoulders. Your shoulders were massive. You had piercing blue eyes, and you chewed gum and had the hat down. Sometimes you wore the glasses, and sometimes you didn't. It was intense. It was intense. There was an intensity on that field that you created. You created that and then passed it to your players. You were that leader, Eddie said. You were that general that your sister called you. You were this fearless man. Fearless. You may have feared losing, but when we got on that field, we looked at you as this fearless leader that we were going into war. And it started at the practice. It started all that work we did. But the second we got on that field and we started the big red stare, you could hear pin drop. Didn't matter what the other team was doing, whether they were preparing or clapping their, doing their whole clap thing. Didn't matter. We were staring. We were preparing. We were, I believe now, mental imaging us beating them.
We were defiant. We were very defiant.
Was that the purpose, to be defiant, or was it the purpose to get into their head and say, look at these guys, they're staring at us, ready to just attack?
Well,
I mean, what's the psychological warfare there?
The psychological thing was, look across, and those are the guys that want to make your mothers cry,
right?
Want to make you miserable all next week. These are the guys that want to take away all you've accomplished over the course of the season. These are the guys that want to take your dignity away and make you look bad. So that was the stare. Visualize what these guys want to do.
And so you obviously tell the team to do that, right? Stevie Brown told me one time, he said, because this was 1983. So Steve said, hey, the big red stare. I said, yeah, of course. He's like, Conti started that, and Coach Conti, Coach Conti started that. But then I named it. So Steve Brown told me that he named the act of it. You created it. Said, you're going to stand there. You're going to do it. And I have to go back because I have to say, did you tell the guys you're just going to go out there and we're going to look at, was that like a thing you had to have this discussion with the 83 team? Because it was common knowledge by the time I got there.
Yeah. I orchestrated
right.
it.
You're going to stare. Mm-hmm. And then my favorite part of that whole thing would be like, okay, you'd either tell, and at the time it was myself, Johnny, or Richter, one of the captains, all right, let's get it started. And that was a volcanic eruption of emotion, enthusiasm, the tension from the week of practice. All of these things would just boil and pop at that one moment.
I remember that.
That's an impressive way to start a pregame.
Enthusiasm was very important to me. Nobody was allowed to not be enthusiastic. from the guys that weren't involved in offensive game practice. Those guys were on the sideline. They had to be yelling and making noise. It was painful, really, because everybody had to be alert to what was going
Right.
on. Nobody had a rest time. There was no downtime. If you were a second or third team guy, you were yelling and screaming during the practice, the whole practice. And if I didn't hear it in practice, if I'd be working with the running backs and I wouldn't hear the linemen making noise, everybody would have to pay for that. I'd stop practice
That's what a team
and we'd
was.
start running, and that's what it was.
That's what a
I
team
have a
was.
funny story
Yeah.
about Kenny Pickett Sr.
Okay.
talking about beach practice and jumping jacks. And we would do, 10 jumping jacks after every maybe set of exercises, stretches. All right, give me 10.
Right.
Off the sand onto the board, okay, give me 10. He said the worst thing we could hear was give me 8.
Yes. I agree.
made me
Why
laugh.
is that?
Why is that?
Yeah.
Because somebody invariably would go to 9 to 10, and that poor person
Yeah.
paid the price.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because
usually got mugged right on the board.
absolutely. It's funny that you say that because I forgot that you would do the mind tricks like
Right.
that. And what that, again, now looking back at it is you're exhausted, you're depleted, but you need to focus. And this is a focus type of exercise. It's not just physical, it's mental. And I think most teams didn't even have it. You made it seem like we were underdogs.
Yeah.
I can't remember a time that I actually went into a game not thinking that we were outmatched, out-coached, out-talented. We didn't belong on the same field with them. And this is all 3 of my years playing for you. It was the common theme was, they're better than us. They're faster than us. They're more talented than us. And
We had to be perfect.
we had to be perfect. We had to be, but you made it so that we were perfect. Maybe not every play. Maybe we screwed up. I know I screwed up. Maybe we weren't perfect. Maybe we had some misses. But we were perfect in the sense of if we had that bad play, if we had that missed play, we were perfect in lifting each other up.
Right.
As a team, remembering what we had gone through in the preseason, remembering the doubles, the front of the school practices, all of this stuff, we were perfect in that, and we never failed in that, ever. That must make you proud.
Well, one of my thoughts along the way as I was making practices almost intolerable and the haranguing by me and constant screaming and yelling at you, one of the things that I thought I was accomplishing, and I think I did accomplish it, was to make it so difficult and so overbearing for some of you, and on the verge of probably saying, I don't want to do this, and I don't like this guy. What's he yelling at me for? But what I think I accomplished and what I actually intended to accomplish was to have you guys have this feeling that we could overcome him. We together, we could survive the way he is, the way he treats us, and the things that he makes us do, that it made you guys closer. I really feel as though it did. And I was the common target at that time. That it was a goal
Right.
to be able to take whatever I had to hand out
Right.
and survive it
Right.
and accomplish despite, your feelings toward me or anything else. But I wanted, it was kind of, in retrospect, now I think back, it was kind of painful for me.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
Later
While
on
you're
in my career.
not later on. Let me. While you're doing this, while you are this
Martin,
general, you're a general. You are feared. You're revered, feared and revered during this time, and you are tough. You're a drill sergeant. Your players are, you're saying funny lines that I probably in your head you're cracking up. Are you during this time while it's happening? Are you thinking, oh man, I really don't like being like this, but I feel like I need to?
exactly.
Was
right.
that like a kind of like a battle within you?
Very, very much so. Very much so. And one of the major regrets I have is that battle that I allowed the bad guy to win. See,
So it's interesting that you call it the bad guy.
Well, Galatra wasn't the bad guy.
Yeah, but Galatra wasn't the head coach.
Pagano wasn't
Not the head coach.
The problem for me, Telly,
Yeah.
Manoli,
Mhm.
you look like Telly.
I know. Well,
now.
geez, he's huge. He's even bigger than me.
The problem was that nobody could do it like I could do it. Nobody could be as bad as I could be. Galatra was a Father Flanagan.
Right.
Pagano was the professor. He was the intelligentsia.
Right.
And Parker tried to be different people at different times,
Sure.
but did a good job.
Yeah.
So it really shortened my career, even if, let's say, Eddie wasn't going to college and I wanted to follow him, I don't know how much longer I could have lasted at the pace that I created
That
for
you
myself.
created. And we'll get to kind of that like little thing that you just mentioned in a little bit, but there's so by default, and what you needed to do and what you needed to accomplish, you needed to create this larger than life image of Coach Conti, and not that you were mean. It wasn't a meanness, and I find it somewhat interesting that you said the bad guy, because that bad guy, as you say, has created, took boys, took spoiled people, maybe put people who shouldn't have been on the field, and made them into young men, dedicated, focused, perseverance, all these like tenets of the Spartan, big red Spartans. And yet you struggle with that person who created all of those young men. And if you look, you can look at people now and where they are in their careers, and you can say, wow. And you really have a lot to do with that, because I can tell you 150 times where people said no to me, and you can't do this, and you're not smart enough, and you're this, and you're that. And, not knowingly, I revert back to my training. So I find it very difficult to understand why you have that feeling of I should have been or you said I was the bad guy. That bad guy won. The bad guy did not win. The guy who needed to be there to create this won.
Well, psychologically, I knew through my own experiences along the way
Yeah.
with disappointments in myself as a player. I was never as good as I should have been. And people would think I was successful, but I didn't. And I can attribute it to a severe knee injury that never was taken care of. Played with it all through high school, played with it all through college, never got it taken care of, never. Resulted in a very bad trick knee, which only my wife knew how to put in.
Really?
And maneuver. But that explains why I hated injuries so much.
Yeah.
And I never, ever allowed myself to sympathize with any of you that were hurt. I remember Rock Roboto coming to me before the Middletown South game and limping badly. And I yelled at him. Evidently got in a pothole or something. And it was during practice, day or two before the game. A very key member of the team, obviously.
Yeah.
And I started yelling at him because he got hurt. No sympathy, nothing. Never sympathized with anybody because of what I went through, probably. But psychologically, I knew through my own experiences that life is hard and then it gets harder, and that you've got to be prepared for it. And one of the ways I could prepare you for life and what was awaiting you is to make it the way I made it at practice.
Tough.
And that was my mindset.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing,
But-
and I knew that DIFUS could be called at any moment,
Yeah, of course.
and they were at one time.
Right. So let me. You bring up this point of you were preparing us. Did you know? Was that your goal? Like the bigger goal, the overlying goal is I'm creating men here. I'm teaching you how to be a man and preparing you for life, because it's tough. It's tough. This isn't the game of football. This is the game of life, because that's a much bigger
Well, that was
tradition.
a big. Well, I won't say that was as important to me as winning the game. It was important to me that you paid a price. Football was a microcosm of life for me. And it was important for me to make that experience difficult so that you'd be ready for anything. You wouldn't quit. You wouldn't quit, because if you quit here, you're going to quit on your family. You're going to quit on your wife. You're going to quit on your kids. You're going to quit at work. And it's funny, speaking of that, one of my players brought up that analogy to me just recently.
Yeah.
He remembers me saying that this is teaching you not to quit and to handle whatever adversity there is, because you're going to be the head coach of your family one day.
That's right.
And you're going to have to be the leader. And yeah, it was a conscious thought as much as it was the winning part of it.
There's more tradition. There's more. There's the Spartan prayer. Did you come up with that?
Yes. I came up with that. I was in a pizzeria in Asbury Park, and I saw something written that I was able to
feed off of and
reword.
Right.
When things get tough,
Right.
as they sometimes will. That part came off of, that wasn't my original. That came off of that particular posting that I had seen. But then I would, add to it. And that's where that came from.
Did that start in '83? Did you so you do
Yes,
all
it
this
did.
stuff simultaneously,
Yes,
right?
it did
It's
in
kind of like
83.
all happening at the same time. Talk to me about start time. You mentioned it earlier. We as a player, we all loved it because it was like a little bit of like almost a reprieve from the stress of the practice.
Came after a win.
It came after a win. It was, you weren't really big, like you said, on, MVPs and stuff like that. But, there was this, it was like almost like you put the good work in, you put the hard work in. I'm going to give you 20 minutes to suck it up, enjoy it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. So tell me how you find the song.
Start time was fun for me.
Yeah.
That was a good time. The song.
Yeah, the song. Tell me where you find the song. When was the first time you heard the song? Do you remember it?
No, but
as a kid?
What we were trying to do, I tried to be as humble as I could with everybody.
Yeah.
Not to give anybody undue praise or lavish praise on anybody. And everybody got a little piece of it. After a win, there was no start time after a loss.
Correct.
In fact, we had lost a game that bothered me so much. I had all the stars and stripes.
We'll get to that.
You had to take them all
Yeah,
off.
we'll get to that because I want to ask you some questions on those.
So, where did I first see something that spurred that spark? And it was with Ron Signorino.
Okay.
My granddaughter's going through something right now as far as her nursing career.
Mm-hmm.
And she's thinking about going to other hospitals than she's at now. And I told her, don't be afraid of change. Don't let change scare you. I went to 5 schools, and every place that I went, I learned something.
Yeah.
And it finally made me the coach that I was. Start time I learned from Ron Signorino, Toms River South. We had won a game, and I was new to the program, but this had been going on for years. And we'd bring the guys into the gym, the wooden floor, with their helmets. And then it was the beating of the helmet, boom, 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 almost in an Indian drum cadence.
Right.
Boom, 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 boom. And then Signorino, and he didn't give out stars and stripes or skull and crossbones.
Right.
But he talked to them, and I think he read off accolades, perhaps. So I took it to another level, obviously. And Dave Enderle used to confront me on the cost of stars and skulls and stripes. It was getting expensive
I would
because we were winning.
Yeah.
And if you look at the helmets, they were covered with stars and skulls and everything, So we first start time was in the classroom, and I had Todd Schmidt and Andy Schwartz, our managers, rig up the tape, and after every category, Telly Kostadakis, Manolis Manolakakis, my favorite Greeks, my Spartans, come up for X number of tackles, this, that, and then the managers would have to turn the start time tape up as you walked up.
As you're walking,
you don't
walk
have
up music.
To be a star.
Right.
Come up, you'd get your star, and go back down. And the song was so apropos, wasn't it?
It's amazing.
It was fabulous. Andy called me up, Schwartz called me up the other day, and we were talking about start time. And he said, on the way here, I heard the song. I hate that song. And the reason he hates it is because if he didn't have that queued up for when you were walking up, I'd start yelling at him. Why can't I get anybody to do
You traumatized him.
I traumatized
him.
Every time I hear that song. So another person I ruined.
But, the message that you're sending with, you don't have to be a star, baby, to be in my show.
Right.
As you're giving out stars, as you're giving out accolades, as you're giving out individual skull and crossbones, to the guys who are
Don't
in the
forget
room.
the ceremony of getting your assassin.
The assassin stripe ceremony, all of this, and you have this music playing for the team members who maybe it's not their time yet, and they're not coming up there yet, and they're not being celebrated, but yet they feel just as important.
And everybody got a star.
And everyone got a star
win.
for a win. So you're as a person listening to this, and may have been, subliminal messaging to you, while this is seeing this happen, but you're hearing a whole nother, it's genius.
But what do kids think like yourself when you hear that song?
I turn the radio up. I've introduced it to my wife. I've explained it to her, what the impact of it is.
Scarred for life.
Scarred for life. Or starred for life. I don't know. One or the other. It is so, and every person that I know that has gone through the program, we talk about Star Time and we sing the song as if it was yesterday. It's on my playlist. So it's again, impactful. All of these traditional things that you've talked about, the big red stare, the Star Time, jumping jacks. I mean, these things have been ingrained into all of your players who've experienced this, and it's just amazing what you've done with that. Big Red Report. I mean, this is just I think out of all of these things are amazing. But you remember when I said to you, I wish there was a way to have documented the years with videography or whatever over the years, and just have footage and film, and just the what they're doing these days. If it would have been able to been done back then, but you knew that there was going to come a time that you would have to reflect back, or people would have to reflect back. You had some sort of premonition. You documented it in the Big Red Report as if it's reading the most epic Greek mythology type style writing. You can we go back to them now, and we've been reading them. I've been reading them. My teammates have been reading them. We've been sharing them. That to me took some sort of I don't know. You tell me what's your point of view on the Big Red Report? I mean, this is my point, but what's your point of view?
Where I learned it was, again, Ron Signorino used to write an article for the Tom's River local newspaper, like a coaster.
Okay.
And he would anguish over having to write this, I didn't anguish over it. I looked forward to it for the most part.
You enjoyed writing.
I enjoyed writing it because I had so much great material to write about. And then we had the different sections that I included people in, docs, sick bay.
Yep.
The Sultan Speaks.
Who named him the Sultan, by the way? Did you?
I think I did.
Yeah.
The Mogul,
Yeah.
Carmen, the Mogul
Yeah.
growls.
All right.
Guess what section?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, Telly, I didn't purposely include people or exclude people. I didn't want to lavish too much praise on maybe the quarterback or the receiver or something like that. The linemen never get the praise they deserve, and
They had a section.
we tried to include it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I used to have to harass DeRouge to get his in on time. Goliath, I had to harass these
So
guys.
you had to get them in check.
Everybody had to contribute, and I remember the Board of Education. They would send them out. They would get their copies. If I was late a day, they were calling up.
Really?
Where's the big red report?
So,
The superintendent wanted it.
right.
And there were times when I put things in the big red report that came back at me
They weren't happy.
that I shouldn't have put it.
Well,
And then Enderley would catch hell for that because he was supposed to pre-read it.
right. So, the big red report. I mean, I remember it wasn't just the players they wanted their hands on it. I remember teachers having it on their desks. I remember it. When it came out, it was like a scramble to get
When
it.
it came out, it was about as big as this.
Yeah,
And afterwards, it came to be at least 2 full pages
yeah,
of
yeah.
things. Tony Gardella, English teacher,
Hmm.
would take the big red report in the teacher's lounge and read it in a Shakespearean.
Come on.
Yes, to read.
Wow.
He would read it.
Wow.
Like he was reading Shakespeare.
Wow.
In that.
And the other teachers would be surrounding him and listening in.
Yeah.
Was it ever a burden to you to do that?
I don't think it was. The burden was to make sure I recognized the people that deserved to be recognized in it, and not to leave people out.
But that took a lot of work because you had to study the film, you had to know the stats, you had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things there that are like juggling.
Interesting story about that was we had a Spanish teacher, Elsa Lake, Dr. Lake.
Mm-hmm.
She was a real buster. I mean, straight by the book,
Mhm.
boy. Whatever you grade you got, and you had to work for
Right.
a passing grade.
Right.
I believe Johnny Neese had her,
Okay.
which was a big mistake.
Should have got out of that one.
And got back to me that she was at a game.
Mm-hmm.
I put her in the big red report under the guess what section. Guess who was found
I love it.
in the faculty section of the game? Dr. Elsa Lake.
Right.
I walk into the teacher's lounge, which I rarely did,
Right.
except to get
Right.
a cup of coffee
Right.
or something. That I sit with the custodians for the rest of the day. Where's Conti? He's having coffee with the custodian. So I overheard her as I walked in. She's going to the other teachers. How did he know? How did they know? She's reading the big red report where her name
I love it.
that she was caught. Well, I'll put it this way. I bought her off. We had won the B Conference North Championship that year. And we got the jackets. At the faculty meeting, the entire faculty, I would give a 12th man award and gave her
Wow.
her own. That was her prized possession.
Wow.
The
So she just wanted to be included.
jacket
Yeah.
from being in the Big Red
Right.
Report and raving the fact that she was in it.
Right.
I gave her a jacket. I never had a problem with the
Right.
kid
Right.
in her class
Right. Ever since.
ever since. Of course, Joni Spengler was in charge of.
So we'll
winning them all
we'll get
over.
to Joni in a second. So I'm glad that you brought up Coach Spengler because I believe that's a very proactive, before its time coaching position in high school level to have an academic coach. And I know that there was a lot of pressure put on her to be that middle person.
I couldn't go to
You
the
couldn't do
teachers.
it, right? You're not going to go around and
Yeah.
put and discuss things and put pressure on people and
Yes,
not even
right.
I'm not going to say pressure, but to
Oh,
you know,
it would be perceived as a pressure move.
it's perceived, but it's really there was a true, genuine.
I wanted them to get extra credit.
You want them to get extra
somehow.
credit. You want them to stay, active. You want them to be a student athlete, not just an athlete. So these are things that, again, tradition kind of, you set that tradition in motion. Now, without saying names, I'm sure people had problems with academics, and that's why we brought her on, right? But I think, when there is a problem, you were a proactive person to find solutions so that those problems didn't occur. Am I correct in saying all that?
I would think if you were going to ask me my accomplishments, I think that stands as one of my greatest accomplishments in establishing the Tuesday and Thursday study hall.
Yeah.
Because not only did I know it was important that you had extra time to get some work done, and that knowing that you had to be there, might as well make the best of it. You had an hour to do some type of work that you were asked to do, homework. But we also had players. I could joke about it. Maybe I shouldn't. But if I may, and they know where my heart is, I had some of my rabbinical students, like Spencer Newman, who was brilliant.
Brilliant.
He would be in that study hall figuring out how to do math work with another player.
Right.
I had teachers within
the team. Right.
And one of my theories was, if I can get your homework off of your minds, I can get a quality practice.
Absolutely.
I wanted to relieve you of some things that were hanging over your head, a paper or whatever. Right. And Joni was in there to help out. Yeah. And it turned out to be a big success, something that I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't know that it's carried over. I could be wrong. It may have, with Sal and Larkin.
Right.
But I can say that most of the traditions, in fact, probably all of them, have been intact.
So you're in full Big Red mode. You got your 83 team. You know, that's the team, right? You know, that was the original Big Red team. You're building up a record. You don't really ever have a losing record. No. You take a team that went completely from losing to now you're winners. And not only are we winners, but we are winners. We're doing it with class. We're doing it with style. We're doing it with being humble. We're doing it with hard work. We're all the tenets that you wanted to put in are there. Now I'm going to tread pretty light here and very carefully, but I think, you know, there's this thing that we have to talk about because it's part of who you are. It's part of Big Red football, and I would not be doing, I think, people, myself, yourself, if we don't acknowledge the sacrifice that the Conti family throughout the years have given. And in November of 1988, the most ultimate price happened. The most ultimate sacrifice happened. And this is tough for me to speak on because you are a mountain of a man. And I remember as a kid coming there, I was a freshman and I wasn't playing for you yet, but I remember the scene. It was horrific. You know, I asked Eddie, what do you want to ask your dad? What do you want to ask your dad? And he wanted to, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is he wants to know what went into the process to continue coaching and not hang it up after Georgie passed away. He knows that you wanted to coach him. That he understands. It's not that what he wants to know. He wants to know what the process was to continue on.
Well, he was a big part of it, obviously. I had the rest of the family, of course, that I had take care of. I couldn't quit. Quitting was not an option. The I couldn't let him down because his whole life up until that point was playing for me.
Yeah.
And so I had to go on. There was no other option. It was very, very difficult. If he wasn't there, would I have continued? I think I would have. Because I would have felt that I would have let the rest of the guys that had paid such a severe price up until '88, I would have let them down. So I probably would have stuck with it, but it was a no-brainer to keep going for Eddie's sake. And I think it would have further destroyed him. It almost did, but he toughed it out.
When I asked Eddie about Georgie, his response to me was, he was my best friend. You paid the ultimate price. You dusted yourself off. You came back with an intensity that no one thought you could. Not even sure if you knew you could. But the intensity that you came back, that chip on your shoulder that maybe you had your whole life, the naysayers, as you used to say, the doubters. Not only did you want to prove them wrong, but you owed it to yourself, to your family, to your son who is Pat. You owed it to them to be the man, the leader that you were. Coach Gallatro said, your best year of coaching was 1989. You did it alone. You didn't really have anyone on staff. You had Kenny Parker. You didn't really have a defensive coordinator. You had Stevie Brown and Chuck Lucia as kind of help, but you essentially did everything yourself, which, again, for the time that we're talking about, is could have been therapeutic for you. It could have been a release for you. But you never let your player, because I was a sophomore on that team, you never let us for 1 second doubt that Connie has changed. For better or for worse. Maybe for better, obviously for better for us, maybe worse for you because, again, these are internal fights. We have these internal battles that we go through all day long. I can appreciate that. So I think that that part, this Spartan cry that you talk about, this legacy, all of these tenets that you are preaching to us are get up, dust yourself off, no quitting, all these things that you've been saying from 83 to now 88. And now the man who's been preaching this stuff, the guy who created this, has now paid the ultimate sacrifice, and the man shows up at the next game, partly, and now leads by example. The ultimate example to me is that you came back from a devastating thing, but you showed up. You didn't quit. You focused. You did all the things that you were preaching. and you led by example. And that didn't dawn on me until I was older and I had gone through my own loss. I lost my nephew, Peter.
Yes.
And I was shambles until you showed up into that wake where I felt it's impossible. It's impossible to go through this. And then you showed up and you gave me this icon of mine shows up and gives me a hug. And then it all comes back. This guy is the Rock. He is a true rock. He understands not only does he understand it, the guy, he dusted himself off and he came to war, he came to battle, and it was as if you gave me this jolt. You gave me a jolt of it's going to be okay. Maybe it's not okay. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's still painful. But that's not what the message that you were saying. You didn't have to say anything. You just gave me a hug. It is the most amazing thing to know that I played for a coach that not only helped me in playing and overachieving, because we're a bunch of overachievers. I mean, we were outplayed. We just didn't belong on the field with some of these people. It's common knowledge. I mean, but we outplayed them, we outsmarted them, we outworked them. So that's amazing to me. But the other part of it, that I'm looking at this man who is not just talking it, he's walking it, and the lessons, the in my head, the hearing of certain sayings, all of this stuff is now continuing on into my, professional career, never quitting, all of these things that, I just, unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'm so proud to have played for you and been able to experience that. I know that when I tell people I played for Ocean, they want to know, did you play for Conti or not? And it's a big difference. I'm sorry. I mean, there are Conti years and then there are other years.
Right.
And I know that I speak for many of my teammates and classmates that, we were just, it's ridiculous when I get together with all the teammates and the friends, how we talk about you and some funny things, obviously, and a lot of the yelling and a lot of the clipboards and the ringing of the helmet with that brass key ring. I mean, those things. But those are the memories that actually bind us, and those are the memories that make us feel that we were a part of this amazing, amazing story. I don't think when I tell people this stuff, they look at me like I'm ludicrous, like I'm crazy. They don't understand it because they didn't live it. So it's hard to understand. But so the ultimate sacrifice, you do it, you're back on your feet. It's just, again, it doesn't fall short on, it may fall short on some people. I can't say that. I can only speak for myself. And I think that, I know, and speaking to Coach Gallatro about this, he's probably the only one on your coaching staff that could relate.
Right.
And his comment to me was, who would have thought that there would have been two coaches on the same team who have lost their child? And he was just feeling that there was a higher God, higher force that brought you two together. And then he said that, he coached that first half of the Raritan game, and then by halftime you came down there, started yelling at him because you didn't know what the hell he was doing. So, and then he said, you know what? I knew that's when, okay, coach is back. So, I think people are in amazement. I mean, you're very polarizing. I will tell you that. You're polarizing. There are the disciples, right? There are the people who bought into it, and there are the people who couldn't do it or didn't want to do it, didn't want to make that sacrifice, as you say. So there is a polarizing effect that you have, which probably goes back to your sister's comment on you. You're very complex, but you're polarizing. And but the one thing that is for sure is no one can doubt your work ethic. No one can doubt your ability to pick yourself up after tragedy and lead. I mean, these are just, again, I don't want to like overplay this, but this is what Big Red tradition is. I've almost forgotten about the games. I mean, I'm remembering them now because of this whole thing, but this is what Big Red is. Big Red is everything that you preached and then how you did it in your own feet. I think that's it for me as far as.
Well, like you say, the polarizing part of it wasn't so much that people couldn't do it. It's that they
want to do it.
But they wanted to do it, but for some reason it was a little bit too difficult. And here's where I get back to, I never spent the time to take you kids aside and find out what's going on in your life. How are you doing? How's school? Do you have a girlfriend? Well, you never.
Well, we were not allowed to have girlfriends, right?
You never admit to that.
Which I found out why that was, by the way. I knew where that came from.
Okay. So, but I never took you aside.
Right. I
never spent time that I could have, and what's your father do? What's your favorite meal? Never took the time, and if I had, I probably could have gotten you over that hump where I don't want to play for this guy, or he's not so bad. I'm going to stick with it. I could have done more to win you over as a person, not just as a football player. And although I preached all those things, I regret very much that I didn't endear myself personally more, because I went to Delaware to watch Eddie play, and the head coach there, Tubby Raymond, who is a legend in Delaware. Of course, when I played at Temple, we played against him.
Right.
And Tubby brought me into the locker room. Tubby allowed me to come to practices and watch. I, on the other hand, completely ignored the fathers that came to watch practice. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to know anybody. I didn't want to be friends with anybody. You had to work very, very hard to get me to go maybe get a cup of coffee with you. The only thing I remember in all the 11 years of politicking, I wasn't obviously a politician, was I had Dr. Rouge when several of the parents, Louis Bavacqui and a couple other guys, they would come out in the freezing cold and watch practice. And I would walk by them as they were in the stands. We brought stands out for them to sit.
Wow, that was nice.
That was nice.
That was nice.
But I would walk right by them. I wouldn't look right. I wouldn't look left right after practice. I'd go in. Not even a hello. I wouldn't even say hello to them. But I did have DeRuse make hot chocolate for them and bring hot chocolate out.
Did Doc DeRouge say this is compliments of Coach Conti, or did he? No, he just kind of gave it to him.
I don't know what he said.
So So okay, so my take on all that, I get it, and I mean, in retrospect, I can understand why
Yeah.
you feel this way. But in the time, at the time when you were going through this, um, getting to know your players on a personal level or chumming it up with them, do you think that would have affected your ability to be who you were on the field? Do you feel that would have? It's a direct conflict.
I felt that it would have been.
Right.
It would have been something that would have been misread
Right.
by other players,
Right.
maybe, and
then the dads coming there. Not all the dads came. Some people didn't even have dads, right? So I think your level of like trying to like keep all that stuff on a straight and narrow was the effect of I'm not going to chum it up with someone because they're coming to practice. I don't want that to maybe reflect in saying I'm paying preferential treatment because I'm saying hello to their dad. The two have nothing to do with each other. But it's a difficult thing, right?
For some reason, it was important for me to look angry all the time. I never wanted to look like I was satisfied.
Were you ever satisfied? That's an interesting concept you just said there. That
I don't think I was ever satisfied with myself. I look back at my record, 86 wins, 23 losses, and I go over the losses. And had I been a better coach, we would have won at least half of those. So I anguish over that today. I look, but it's in the past. I have regrets. Let's put it that way.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll get to those in a second. I'm gonna change like a gear here for a second, and you were all in. I mean, you were determined. You were persevering. This is 1983. You are doing whatever it takes, painting the town red, except there happens to be some sort of vandalism that happens to your car.
Well,
what happened to the car?
In every great institution, there are myths. And I'm not saying that was a myth, but there's only one person that knows what really happened beside myself.
Who's that?
And he's my best friend that unfortunately got Parkinson's and can't walk. But he's the one that knows what happened to the car.
Is it safe to say, because it was Long Branch, right?
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that Long Branch had nothing to do with it?
Yes, it is safe to say that.
All right. And is there a funny story behind it?
Well, I guess it's time to.
I mean, we're 40 years later.
I had this 73 Pontiac Grand Prix, and I didn't take really great care of it. In fact, Eddie destroyed the interior of it somehow by pulling on the back of the seats. And anyway, it wasn't great. It wasn't in great shape, but it was good. And we had come to a critical time in our early history where we had just beaten Shore Regional, and the Shore Regional staff and the Long Branch staff were very, very close. And it came to my attention that they were sitting together plotting a way to defeat us in the Long Branch game. In fact, Jimmy Simonelli was on that staff, and he could probably attest to that. We had beaten Shore Regional 10-0, and all of a sudden, people were really taking notice of the team. Newspapers,
Sure.
Tony Graham became a fan of ours. And they were determined at all costs to beat us. And we had to come up with, in my mind, something really motivational. So Joe, my friend Joe, lived on Sunset Avenue next to the high school, Asbury Park High School.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
2 houses
Right.
or 3 houses down.
Right.
And I pulled up in his driveway with a can of green spray paint. And I was determined to make that a rallying cry for the game. And it was subtle, you know. It was green wave rules, LB number 1,
Mm-hmm.
and it really destroyed the car.
Right.
What was left of
Right.
it, you know. And I had parked it. I'd gotten to the field. Was it the day of the game or the day before? I can't remember. It might have been the day of the game.
Uh-huh.
Because I had parked it in front where the guys entered the locker room.
Right.
And TJ Bellissimo came screaming in, "They're going to pay for this," et cetera, et cetera. He was berserk, you know, because he
Right,
thought
right,
Long Branch
right.
vandalized
Right.
it. And of course, I made that I had no knowledge of what happened, and I didn't act all upset about it or anything.
Nothing.
No, I wasn't.
What was the
screaming.
pregame speech like?
Like all of them, you know.
Was there any mention of the car?
Probably not. Probably not.
Okay.
Usual pregame speech centered around the town depends on you. The
Oh,
school
yeah.
depends on you. You're the most important institution in the entire school.
Yeah.
It's not the Latin club. It's
Right.
not the drama club.
Right. Right.
It's nothing. The school is basically nothing
Right.
without you.
Right. Right.
You were the most
Right.
important, and there's people in this town depending on
Right.
you because they think you're soft, your parents are soft. Anybody that was brought up in Ocean Township is soft.
I'm ready to strap
Yeah,
up
that's-
right now, Coach. Where's my helmet? Let me get that helmet. I'm ready to strap up.
And later on, as years went by, I'd reference when you were little kids,
Right.
and you had hot dogs, and you were idolizing the players out there. Now you're those
That's
players.
right. That's right.
You know, and bring up personal things. But
Yeah.
as far as the writings on the car, it was rather subdued.
Did your pregame speech, did you give it much thought before you went into the room, or you kind of had,
No.
you had a can, like you knew what you wanted to say. It wasn't,
Yeah, I did.
it wasn't like you had to like
Well,
create a new one every time.
No, because I would reference things that have been going
Right,
on and
right.
things that we've done and people that have attacked us and teachers that weren't on our side.
Right.
And townspeople that doubted us and, you know, what have you done? We would have won a conference championship by the 7th game, and I'd be screaming, "You haven't done anything.
Right.
What have you done?
Right.
You haven't done anything."
Right. America doesn't care what you did yesterday.
Reference America a lot.
America didn't care what you did yesterday. I can't tell you how many times I've used that on people.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a little game here. It's called If or That. Okay. Size or speed?
Speed.
Determination or consistency?
That's tough because they're important. Consistency was very, very important to me. It wasn't that we had a program that went 9-2 or 8-1 or 10-1. It was important that we did that every year and that we never had a losing season. That was important to me.
Great athlete or a good athlete with a great work ethic?
Well, you couldn't survive unless you had the work ethic. I can't tell you how many great athletes I threw off the team as sophomores at Asbury Park. I didn't have to do that at Ocean.
Your first year at Ocean at beach practice, there were a couple players, not saying names, it doesn't matter, that were maybe late to a beach practice that would have been starters, who had been starters. And you basically said, go home, you're off the team.
Well, that's a story
Is that an old wives' tale, or is that something that
no,
happened?
that's not a myth.
Right.
That's,
Okay.
well, it's a myth, but it's a true myth.
Right. Okay. Good.
What is a true myth? I don't know what that's called, but
Well,
these are
everything.
myths are stories
Right.
that are been compounded
Of course.
and hyper.
So tell me what happened. Then.
Hyper-
Do you remember?
hyperbole.
Do you remember what happened?
Like it was yesterday.
Okay.
And there were 3 players. 2 of them had good size. One of them was not big, but had experience and was a decent player. And one of them had a father that was on the president of the Booster Club. And this is where Billy Galatro comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Billy and Pagano had background on these guys. And they said, under no circumstances do you want them on the team. And then there was one fella out of the 3 that I particularly wanted because he had size and he was athletic.
Right.
We could have really used him. And I did everything in my power to keep him on board. So they were allowed to come to beach practice. And after beach practice, as you recall, we had double sessions.
Sure.
Or we went out in front of the
Right.
school.
Right.
We went out into the front of the school because we wanted to publicize
Right.
ourselves.
You wanted to let the town know Big Red was back.
And we enjoyed the fact that they were beeping their horn, giving us the finger
Right.
and everything like that.
Absolutely.
It made me very happy.
Yes. Which made you more happy, the finger or the actual honking of the horn?
No, the finger.
The finger was better, right?
Yeah, because
you knew you were getting under their skin.
Long branch
Yeah, of
people.
course, of course.
So they had gone through beach practice. They had gone through in front of the school. Now it came to double sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed up for the first session. The second session, they didn't show up for. And Billy Galatro, was vindicated. He didn't want me to
Right.
go along with them. And he went into their lockers and got these large plastic bags,
Cleaned
labeled
it up.
them body bags, and put all their equipment in the body bag. And that's what the kids
Oh man.
were around
That's
saw.
amazing.
They were gone.
They were gone.
We threw them off.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they were buddies. They were friends with these people.
What?
The players were
Oh,
friends
yeah.
with. They were close.
They weren't. They didn't voice any
Right.
opposition
Right.
to it. There wasn't any
Right.
backlash where they formed a players' union. And came out.
right.
There's no such thing.
I would imagine that it would have been terrifying for anyone to speak up anyway, because I think probably after beach practice they realized, what the
ground rules.
the ground rules were. I mean, this is, and again, I'm going to reference back into, the military and going through basic training. You're getting stripped and then built up, and after you don't really get built up. At least in my opinion, we weren't really getting built up until after we were having the scrimmages with other teams. You were still on us saying we look terrible. I could read back on some of the reports. We don't have leadership. This is the 90 team with Dougie Maruka and D'Ambrosi as cap. We don't have leadership. We don't have this. And I'm like, oh my God, did he really even say all that in the newspaper? And I'm like, wow, this guy was the ultimate motivator and would get the most. And that team went on to almost win the state championships. And, I just think that that's just.
Well, I did want to save the one boy because I had heard that he had severe family issues.
Right.
And that's where Galatro came into play. He said no. And I went with him.
Okay. Neil Solomon, 1987, asks, Coach, you played, coached, and observed the incredible game of football at other programs at various levels for your entire life. You coached all shapes and sizes and levels of talent at Ocean. What is the one characteristic of the players, the coaches, the teams, the program that not only made us winners on the field, but that transformed a town and has us sitting here today doing this interview in prep for a 40-year reunion of the Big Red? What is the one characteristic? That's Neil. You know Neil. Very tall. A long question. The doc,
Well,
right?
I would say the thirst for success. There was in town, in our school, there was a great need for something successful, whether it was the football team at that time or was the academic team, whatever. But there was this great thirst for victory, and we provided that. And that is a characteristic that I admire, that they were willing to do almost anything
Right.
to achieve that, to achieve success. And you guys proved that. You were willing to do almost anything to be successful. And I think that's carried on, especially your life, your career, and the lives of so many of others, that they wanted to be successful on the football field. It meant a lot to them for a number of reasons. And it still now resonates in your families and your work. And that's what the town I think of when I think of the town as a whole, because they stood behind us, and they knew that there were some questionable things going on. I mean, the practices would never be tolerated now, never.
Right.
The innuendos
Right.
and the things that I'd yell across when a kid made a mistake. I'd yell across to Billy. Billy would understand where I'm coming. Billy, is it the mother's fault or the father's fault? I mean, who says these things?
Right.
You know,
No.
because you made a mistake.
Right.
Now he's attacking my mother and father.
Right. I heard one from Rob Davis where you said, Bavakwi, you're killing your father. Like, what does that have to do with killing his father?
Or the couple Greek kids that I had, and I forget who were the two Greek kids.
Nidus was the one.
Nidus.
And not ringing a bell. I mean, I know who I can picture.
You know who I mean?
Pete Nicolau.
Nicolau
and Nidus.
I'd scream, 60 million Greeks, and this is what I've got.
Unbelievable. Oh, man. Matty Hoyle, your quarterback and a defensive back, I believe.
Yeah.
He was your 88 team, and he was your captain. He asks, with 40 years now of football coaching perspective and ever-evolving nature of the game, what's the one thing, philosophically or schematically, that you may have done differently with the athletes you had at Big Red? Would you have changed anything retrospectively from a coaching standpoint or even just philosophical? I know we talked about a little bit on the philosophy part, but...
Well, in retirement, I got to see a lot of football.
Right.
Football, I couldn't see because I was in season.
Right.
And I learned a lot just by watching the great coaches on the college level. Nick Saban happens to be my favorite. And I regret that I didn't utilize the passing game more. As much as my father pushed and pushed and pushed that I do, I never felt comfortable with the passing game. And I see these quarterbacks throwing up passes, what they call now 50-50 passes. I had some athletes that could have been great 50-50 if I throw the damn ball up to them.
Right.
But no, I was determined to pound it on the ground. And so philosophically, my passing game was not what it should have been. And schematic-wise, I think we would have been more successful had I utilized it more. I had some athletes that I should have gotten to space more, that I didn't. And I look back and it's painful that I didn't do some of these things. I wasn't a great coach, game time coach. If I was going to compliment myself, I would only compliment myself in one area, and that was as a practice coach. I felt as though I did a very good job preparing you guys.
What did you feel at game time that you felt that didn't make you a good game time coach?
Well,
Was it calling certain plays where you felt you should have called something else? Is it feeling like you weren't leading the team? Did you? How?
well,
What was the purpose? Like, why say that?
why I say
Yeah.
that is I think I could have done better. I could have done better. I mean, we lost to Franklin, I think 50-0. I mean,
It wasn't that bad.
but it was a terrible loss. We've had some terrible loss. Mattawan had us 35-0 at half in one game, and we bounced back in years later. We
Sure.
didn't forget these things, but I think I could have called a better game. I was not timid. I mean, many times I'd go on fourth down and deep in our territory.
Sure.
I had the courage to do that, but there was something missing in my willingness to throw the ball.
You had Matty Errico. You had Matt Hoyle. You had Doug Rossbeck. You had Bobby Lupo. And then Eddie. Those were your quarterbacks, correct? Am I missing anyone?
No.
No. All of them probably, I don't know Errico as well because he was a little bit older than me, but from my research, amazing athlete, crazy scrambler, great arm. John Neese praises him. There is no Neese without Errico. Right?
Right.
Which, by the way, he wanted me to ask you, do you regret lying to his mom about how he was going to play football? Never, right? Right. And she sends her regards, by the way. When she told me the story, she's like, he told me that he was just going to be kicking. And then the next thing I know, he's catching footballs and playing defense. And then she said she was waiting for you on outside the locker room after the game. And she was like, you lied to me. And then she said she touched your arm and then she backed away. Anyway, that's a funny story. So you have these amazing athletes, probably the best athletes, some of the best. I'm not going to say the best, but some of the best athletes. And I remember you always saying this: the quarterback, you have to be the best athlete on the field. All of them were runners, except for Dougie is not as much. But Dougie could truck. He could truck. He could truck. He was a big guy. So he may not have been the speed guy like the rest of them, but he was a truck.
He was 5 yards at a clip.
He was 5 yards at a clip, exactly. So you had some amazing quarterbacks. And, I wasn't going to do this, but I asked questions to other players that wanted to ask you. It's a hard question because it's definitely different eras, these guys. But Lance, I'm going to give you a volley here. Lance Lucarelli. This is an easy one, right?
Yeah.
Who's the top 5 quarterbacks of Ocean Township Big Red that you coached?
We just answered it, didn't we?
I'm giving you a lobby here. This is an easy one, right? It's Errico. I'm not telling the order, just the top 5.
Okay.
Errico, Hoyle, Dougie, Lupo, and Eddie, right?
Top 5. I only had 5.
That's it. So I'm not asking who the best is. If you want to tell me off, we can talk about it. Unless you want to tell me here.
The interesting thing about quarterbacks is I had a general rule. I never yelled at the quarterback.
I realized that.
I never yelled at the quarterback.
In fact, Bobby and I were talking recently, and we were talking about, the yelling and the getting on us, and And we're laughing about it, obviously, because this is part of what we went through. And his response to me was, it didn't bother me. I mean, yeah, because he never yelled at you. He never touched you.
Actually, there was this.
One time he said he yelled at him.
Yeah, there was in the locker room.
Yeah.
Him and Johnny Key ran out of the locker room.
Yeah. He mentioned that.
Yeah,
But
I pulled their hair.
yeah. Probably well deserved.
Key didn't have much hair.
Right. God rest his soul. All right, and then Lance also wanted to know the top 5 assassins that played at Big Red.
Billy Galatro's.
I know. And I'm not going to reveal. So off camera, we discussed it. I don't think it's fair to divulge those answers because it's a brotherhood.
Yeah.
We're all assassins.
We don't want to hurt anybody.
There's no heart. I mean, we all went through it. We all are in our own right assassins, and it's a unit. So, but it was nice to have the knowledge of who he thought, and
I'm sure he's got himself first.
Oh no, I didn't ask Lucarelli.
Oh
no, Galatro gave me but him that was off camera, and that's gonna stay. That's gonna stay. And you and I can talk about it later. Yeah. I'm going to pose a question to you. Again, it's kind of I'm calling this the Top Gun section, right? So best of the best, but this is more generalities, and it's not necessarily. It's to kind of get into your mind frame of like what you think the teams, how they lined up. I've had last couple of days. I've got the 1993 team on a group chat, and in psychological warfare, I've started to kind of egg them on a little bit to question who the best team was, right? And I've spoken to 83 team, and they're the first ones to pound their chest. Stevie Brown, Lucia, Fester, all these guys. The monsters of Big Red, right? And they will tell you we would have beaten everyone. Everyone. So I'm just telling you, this is what's going on behind the scenes, and then this is all done with fun and love, and it's a kick. It's a real fun. I had Eddie on this group, and he's cracking up and he's laughing. They're digging at me. They're telling me they're bringing the rings to the party and sending me the paper clippings. Anyway, it's all good. It's all in jest. So, and it's all fun. In this day and age, since we can do computer simulation, right, and we can get certain teams from certain eras, and they've done this in the pros where they've taken like the Pittsburgh Steelers steel curtain, and they've played it against the current San Francisco 49er team. Let's say we take the 1983 team and we put them in against, and I'm just going to use my era. I'm going to use 90, 91, 92, 93, those years. How do you see, and I'm not asking for who's better or who's worse. How do you see the matchups between some of these key players like a Johnny Neese, wide receiver, versus a Danny Frisch defensive back? An Erico quarterback versus, I don't know, who do we have? Dougie Rossback, middle linebacker, or how these matchups, do you find that they would be closer or would they be blowouts? The championship team, is the championship team so stacked with talent and so revved that they beat the 83 team in certain situations? And again, I'm not trying to say one team is better than the other. It's more of logistics and like who would match up better with who. Have you ever thought about that?
Only when asked about
who the best is,
who the best team was.
Right.
I've been public with that anyway. I mean,
Okay.
they know my feelings on that. They're not happy about it, but
Who knows about it? 83 knows about it?
I think anybody that's heard me talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. So the 93 team was the best,
93 team record wise was the best.
obviously.
They were the best. They were the culmination of 11 years
Right.
of sacrifice
Sure.
and self-denial by so many of you.
Right.
They are not a product that just happened to show up one day, and they're a
Right.
product of, who came before them.
Right.
And
I reminded them of that, by the way, in the group chat.
And I reference that all the time.
Right.
But the team that has to be considered the greatest of all the teams was the 1983 team,
Really?
because they were a miracle team. They didn't have as much talent as many of our teams
Right.
after them. They had other things that you guys all had, but they had it to a higher degree. Things that they did that can never be duplicated because of when they arrived on the scene. When
Because
you
they
think-
because they were first?
No, because they were the product of 15 years maybe of dysfunction.
Huh. Right.
Psychologically, they were so far behind the 8 ball.
Right.
And then had the shock of having that all reversed in one practice session,
Wow.
and how they did it, and how they survived and eventually flourished with great trauma. The trauma, we lost 3 starters. We were down to women and children, and then we lost three starters,
Wow.
and we still continued to win. And they played so far above their talent level, and what they did in terms of resurrecting a town and a school, no other team had to do that.
Right.
It was all done. It was all a latchkey.
Yeah.
Just come in and turn the key. I used to tell Sal Spampanato that. Sal, just turn the
Right.
key. It's all there for you. And those guys, Larkin and Spomp,
Right.
they're amazing stories in their own.
Yeah.
But nothing can equal the '83 team.
Psychologically, what they had to overcome.
The doubters,
Yeah.
the naysayers,
Right.
the people. You had, sometimes there's only one thing worse than losing, and that's winning too much. And here they come out of the woodwork. They don't want you to succeed.
Right.
And these guys had to face all of that.
Right.
So I'm very proud of that. Those guys. I mean, I can't tell you what they went through, the shock. And to be honest with you, Manol, once Eddie got into the program, by the time he got there,
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of pulling back just a little bit. I have to say it, pulling back just a little bit. The practices weren't till 9; they were to the 8.
Right.
Little things.
Right.
Little things. So the fellas in '83, what they had to endure, it's amazing. And then win, get upset by Howell,
Right.
which should have never happened. And then, of course, we faced Amabil's Death Machine. It's a great team at Wall. And we were competitive, very competitive
Right.
that game. But we lost as predicted. But
I remember being at that game at Wall when I was 83. I was about 8 years old. I was in 3rd grade. I remember the loss, being devastated. I didn't even play football at that point. I was just, but the wave, my dad taking me to the game, saying we're going to see Ocean play Wall. It was the
Big.
thing. standing room only. You know, I can remember you always saying, standing, this is not Pinelands versus Manchester, right? This isn't Pinelands versus Manchester. This is Ocean versus Neptune. This is Ocean versus Long Branch. Standing room only. And you made us believe that there was no other game in the entire shore, maybe the state, that even mattered as much. And again, just a tremendous amount of sacrifice, dedication, whatever, all these tenets that you've always talked about.
Well, you know, our attendance at these games, we paid for all the officials, for all the sports, for the whole year.
Wow.
And our attendance. I mean, people came to our games.
Thousands.
Yeah,
thousands.
And big games. But we won the town over.
Yeah.
And you know, Manoli, what's particularly gratifying is that the other teams have picked up the big red mantle.
Yeah.
Their uniforms are all red and white.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I had one hell of a battle, and it was real tough on Dave Enderle because he was getting it from the other side.
I'm sure.
You know, at one point I had to concede to a blue stripe down the pant.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything blue.
You didn't want any blue on it.
Anywhere.
So when we got there, we had the blue stripe. But looking back at some of the older photos from the 83 team and probably 84 team, it was just a white stripe. You had a white stripe. And then at times, I think you even had just white pants, too.
Then we started winning, and then the blue people came.
Then the blue people came out of the woodworks. Yeah. All right.
And poor Dave had to figure out
like
a way
Smurfs. They came out like Smurfs.
figure out where we're going to put a blue stripe.
Right.
So they're
Right.
happy. That's funny.
That is hilarious. All right. Let's talk about what game haunts you to this day. I know there may be a few, but, you know, and you don't have to tell why, just which one. And we'll...
Okay. Just probably more than one. Certainly the Howell game in '83.
Okay.
That was rough. The '86 loss to Long Branch in the state finals. That was really rough.
Yeah.
That haunts me. More recently, certainly the Matawan game, state championship game where we had beaten them earlier.
That haunts me too.
And, you know, I go over it in my mind. What the hell happened? How did this guy get to run all over us, you know? And certain players didn't play their best is the bottom line.
Yeah.
And,
That was a tough loss. Franklin, 90. At home.
Well, in my mind, we won that game, you know, more than lost it.
Right.
But it's funny, I don't think about that game that much as some of the others because I thought we did our part.
Right.
Just an unfortunate thing at the end.
Okay. We're going to do some word associations. I'm going to say a name. Tell me the first, one word, small comment. Not no.
One word is hard.
One word's hard, I know, but Bill Galatra.
Indispensable. I compare him. I have something that I want to run by you. I have write-ups on the coaches that were most instrumental in our success.
Good.
And I was hoping to read them at the thing. I can't talk too much now about it.
No, you'll have plenty of time to.
But indispensable.
Yeah, good. Tommy Pagano.
Important.
Kenny Parker.
Complex. Throw it back at them.
Yeah.
But productive.
Yeah.
Productive.
Yeah.
He did a good job.
Anthony Suzo.
Mistreated. Didn't handle him well.
You feel that you didn't handle him well? Have you tried in your life to
Yeah,
go back to people that you feel like?
recently,
Yeah. Okay,
in fact,
good.
because he's not in good shape.
Yeah.
He's very ill.
Good.
I've asked to stop by and see him.
Yeah.
I asked Chris.
Yeah.
I asked Billy, and they said not to.
Okay. Okay.
I asked Chris. I said, Chris, I wanted to go see your father. He says, no, he's too proud.
Okay.
He doesn't want anybody to see him like that.
Yeah. Jerry Halsett.
Grateful.
Dr. Rouge. I don't know why I laugh every time I say Dr. Rouge, but Dr. Rouge.
Saint-like.
Yeah. Joan Spengler.
Magnificent. What she did,
Yeah.
magnificent.
Yeah. Do you think these people who were in battle with you, your strategic team, your confidants, your people who you went to war with, do you think that they know how you feel about them?
No. I've never really, like with you, my players,
Right.
Same thing.
So there was no difference in I'm not going to say treated, but you didn't distinguish between your coaching staff and your players on the
I treated them equally bad.
Well,
Believe me.
I know you say, well, I can understand that because again, in the heat of battle, you say certain things to get a point across, but did you really treat them bad or you just expected what you expected and you wouldn't have done anything, you wouldn't have asked them to do anything different that you wouldn't do yourself? Like you wouldn't put someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. So there was an expectation there.
They were held to the same
Right.
standards as I held myself.
As held yourself. Okay.
Or the players.
Perfect. So I just find it, I don't know, I find it interesting that you use the word bad. Maybe
Well,
in today's world,
inconsiderate,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
In today's world.
maybe in today's world it may be viewed like that, but I think back then,
today's world, it would be viewed as horrid.
yeah, but you didn't coach in today's world,
Reprehensible.
right? Yeah, but it's not today's world we're talking about. We're talking about 83 to 93, and that was a different time back then.
Yeah.
It was a different time. All right, I'm going to switch this up a little bit. We're going to go now to people who you didn't coach with and who weren't part of the program. And we'll keep the word association. I think it's pretty good. Some people are going to be the town. Some people it's going to be the coach as well. Long Branch, Jack Levy. And it might be separate. Give me Long Branch and then give me Jack Levy.
Well, Jack Levy. A problem.
Okay. Madawan, Martucci.
Gifted. Madawan.
Madawan's gifted. What about Martucci?
Respected.
Yeah. So in this process, I've reached out to some of the coaches that you coached against.
Well,
And-
what are you doing to your life?
And and I actually spoke to Martucci. There's not a lot of them alive, by the way.
No.
Unfortunately, a lot of them passed. So I reached out to Martucci, and he was very, very kind and responded. And I asked him about you and the program, and if you had some stuff to say. And first thing he said is we needed to be prepared. You're playing a Conti team. You're playing Ocean. They're disciplined. They're emotional, and they're well prepared. He described you as disciplined and tough. Called us the Red Ants, the Red Army, because we would fly out of everywhere, coming around, swarming, and really causing havoc. He described the battles as epic battles between the two teams.
Especially the '83 team.
Yeah. He has the utmost respect for you, especially coaching and just overall. I guess as a player, we don't realize that there's a community here between the coaches because they're all doing the same thing. So I think there was a very, very collegial and respectful way about that. Scotty Larkin told me a story when we got into a fight when we beat them in Matawan at home. My senior year, Eddie's sophomore year, and they started kicking Johnny. It was towards the end of the game. We had to stop the game. That Martucci walked over and was really apologetic and didn't really want any of that to have actually walked. I think he walked John over. He said something like that. So just it seems to be a true gentleman and a respected guy. Neptune, Amabile, the Prince of Darkness, as he's been coined.
The forces of evil.
The forces of
are
evil.
now assembling.
Yes.
A few miles away.
Yes.
If you listen closely, you can hear them. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about Neptune.
You never got to talk to John Amabile.
I did not. He is not with us.
Right. I miss him. And there was nobody more important to beat than him.
So my Amabile memory is you hated him.
Well,
hold on, I'll finish that thought. You hated him. You showed us that this is the force of, the Prince of Darkness. He's the force. He's the evil man. We never knew that you were buddies. You couldn't allow us to know that you were buddies. Scott Larkin confirms that you're buddies. He was in a room with you where you and John were in the same room, and he brought you a framed picture of a game, I believe.
Yes.
From the '83 game
of the stadium of the fans.
Right. I spoke to Galatro, and he said you guys were buddies. So there was a significant admiration between the two of you. You got on Galatro's butt one time for wishing him good luck before a game, and he said, look, he's look at that Italian temper Conti's got. But you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing. These guys were nice people, I'm sure. I'm sure you and John had a wonderful relationship, camaraderie, respect.
Yeah.
But vicious competitors.
It was life and death
Yeah.
for me.
Vicious competitors. It was either you live or I die. Right? One of the two was going to happen. What's your record? What's your if you know, what's your overall record against Amabile?
6-2-1.
So you only lost to him twice and tied him once.
We lost in '87, and we lost in '92, and tied in '92. We had a loss and a tie in '92.
Yeah. The tie was South, wasn't it?
No, it was Neptune
Oh, it was Neptune.
in the same year.
Okay. Do you miss him?
Yeah,
Did you talk a lot after you stopped coaching?
he and I.
Yeah.
Well, our paths crossed. He was coaching for Danny George at Long Branch.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't the same guy.
Okay.
He was sick, and I
Right.
didn't know how sick he was until I grabbed him and hugged him. It was like grabbing a bag of bones.
No, man.
And I could tell by his coaching that he wasn't the same guy.
Right.
I learned more from him. I learned more football by playing against him than anybody else.
Wow.
Yeah, he's smart, very smart.
Middletown South, Generelli.
Well, Bobby Generelli was a good friend of my brother Robert
Right.
Turtle. They were good friends.
Yeah.
And I had a nephew playing for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it got back to me through my nephew that he made disparaging remarks about me and about the way I ran our program. Because he was not like I was. I mean, he was a different personality.
Right.
But a terrific coach,
Right.
absolutely terrific. And I like Bobby. But I didn't like the fact that my nephew had to hear some of the things that he said. I don't know specifically what they were, but they weren't nice. And but I thought he was a very, very good coach, and he was lucky to beat us the first time, and then it was somewhat of an epic game the second time.
Right. He said, when I asked him about you and about the like what I did there, Tina? Yeah. He said his word association was a standard.
Mm-hmm.
You were always encouraging to your teams. You were always encouraging to him, to young coaches.
Yes.
He remembers coming down to Avon and seeing you, and he always felt that you were encouraging to him, and uplifting. Your teams were always physical and relentless, and they always knew that they were going to be in a tough dogfight. You had the ability to make your players overachieve and do with them that no one else could. Very similar to the sentiments of your brother Turtle. You didn't have the D1 player, all the D1 players that some of these other programs did, as Generelli. I mean, it's very a common theme amongst people who know what talent or lack of talent you had in Ocean. And I asked him if there were any similarities between the two of you. And his response was a great respect for the game. I think you're very different people, obviously. But this love of the game kind of is a commonality. Manasquan, Vic Cabu.
Well, we only played each other once.
Did you beat him?
Yeah.
How bad?
14-7.
That's bad.
He didn't take it well.
No, I would imagine he would.
That was his attitude. He never took it well.
The thing is I now remember, because that was right after I finished, right? That was in 92 or 93. What was that?
Higgy caught a pass from
it was earlier. It was before us. Okay.
Yeah.
So you only played him once.
Yeah. I mean, we never lost in Manasquan.
Right. Manasquan. Okay.
But he was a coach only one of those years.
Right. Okay. Brick, Warren Wolf.
Well, it's like playing against a ghost. It's just myth after myth after myth.
Right.
I always used to feel bad if I slipped and dropped the F-bomb.
Right. Did you ever curse when you were a coach?
No, I tried very hard not to. Very hard not to. Billy took care of all the cursing. He was in charge of cursing. But because my father never cursed, so I tried to be a little bit more like him.
Right.
And I had talked to one of his assistants, Warren Wolf's assistants, and I asked him that question: does Warren ever curse? He goes, he curses like a sailor. And I felt so much better about myself that I slipped once in a while.
Do you think he's one of the best coaches of all time?
Yes.
When your name is spoken in the same context, in the same paragraphs as these other coaches, what do you feel? Do you feel that you should be in that same conversation? Do you care? Do you even care about the accolade?
Well, that's a good question. To say that I don't care would be wrong, because I do care, and to be successful as those fellas was important to me. The consistent program
Right.
that wins every year, not just once
Yeah.
in a while. You know, conference championships were important. And I always sort of look at what could have been 4 times going to the finals, not bringing anything home. You know, couldn't win the big one, stuck with me. And with those names, some of them have done, or I have done at some time or another in my career, as much as they had done. You know, I never had an undefeated team until
Right.
Came close a few times.
Yeah.
So I don't feel as though, you know, I don't believe I'm with Warren Wolf. I don't have those wins. I don't believe I'm with John Amabile. I don't have those wins, although my record against him is
Right.
very, very good.
So I guess, you know, when we look at the wins, you only coached head coach, because the only wins that matter, right, are your head coaching wins. Obviously.
Yeah.
So how many total years of head coaching did you have? You had 11 at Ocean,
I had 2 at Keyport.
2 at Keyport,
One of which was a losing
Right.
season. I had
4
4 at Asbury,
Okay, so we're
and then 11 at Ocean.
right. So we're only talking
17.
17. So you're talking 17 years, and some of these guys have coached. I don't know how long did Warren Wolf coach for?
No,
Was it 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
What was something ridiculous? What about Vic? He had more years.
oh, many more.
So you did, in a short period of time, if you had continued to do the 40 years or whatever they coached, you know,
I would have liked to have gotten 100 wins at Ocean.
you did get, oh, well, you didn't get 100 wins at Ocean. You got your 100th win
Yeah, I guess
when we played Red Bank Catholic and we shut them out. That was my senior year.
Okay. We didn't make a big deal out of it.
The paper made a big deal out of
They
it.
did?
Yeah, they did. They have an article for it. But, you probably didn't read the paper, or did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
but
Did the paper make you upset?
not,
reading-
not normally.
Did you ever read something in the paper and say, you know what, that just that's ridiculous.
I thought the press treated us very well.
Okay, they were fair. Okay.
More than fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you think some of those times when we were ranked like number 2 in the shore or whatever we were, and they had a smaller school like a Manasquan, which is it was a group 2 school at the time? Did you think that we would just mop these guys up?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes.
Did that bother you?
Well, it was important to me that we're in the top 10. That was important to me. Other than that, you know,
Then it was meant
so
nothing.
relative,
Okay,
yeah.
all right,
Vic Caboo made the comment, which got back to me,
sure.
that he would have stopped the 93 team.
He said that after he was finished coaching, or
He
that
was-
that year he said
He
that.
was still coaching.
Yeah. Okay.
He would have stopped
Yeah. Okay.
our 93 team, which
Wow.
I don't think he would have.
I don't think he would have stopped the 90-91 team either, but that's, we had a backfield with 3 killers. Lupo, Key, Alston. Eddie was the wideout. I was a lonely flanker. You had Richter to catch, the stork coming through the middle. And, I mean, he had a lot of firepower there. A lot of firepower. I think, I asked some of the coaches what it was like, or what they thought it was like to play against the Assassins, having these 11 crazed dogs, if you want to, animals, facing your offense. And, they said we didn't really talk too much about that, but there was definitely we knew that we were going to get punched hard. So there's millions of stories I'm sure that you could go into and, do and say, and I hope I covered a breadth, a kind of a big breadth of like what the thing was, comprehensive from the early years to the later years.
Very comprehensive.
Do you have any closing remarks, that anything that I missed that I should have asked you, regarding Big Red, regarding you, regarding anything that I missed?
I think you touched upon some points that I wanted to make. The regrets I have. I'm glad that we touched upon that. That the fact that I wish I could have been more of a father, like as opposed to a Dutch uncle type. But in my defense, I thought that's what it would have taken. Otherwise, I could have coached 100 years.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the coaches that followed me have maintained the traditions, that would have been very important for me. Some decisions that I made as athletic director were very bad, thoughtless. Luckily, we didn't go into that too much, but I had to hurt some feelings along the way, and it worked out. I think more than anything, I'm proud of people like you and others that have great careers and highly respected, and are thankful for the lessons that football taught them. Not so much me, but the game of football. And I'm very thankful for that. There's some very personal things that some wishes that I have that probably will never be fulfilled, but I don't want what we did to be forgotten, and this helps, that we can always look back and say we were something pretty big and something pretty effective and something very successful. It's funny because I have a friend, he still does part owner, but he's retired, who owned the Rayco repair shop as you head down 35 into Eatontown.
Right.
Trying to figure out a landmark. It's kind of close to the entrance to Fort Monmouth on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
It was a Rayco, it's a repair shop. And I run into him now in the gym, and I to you, he's how great it was and how extraordinary the run was with me and the Big Red and all you guys. And I was lamenting the fact that I wasn't closer to my players. And him, being a very successful businessman, made a very strong point that's kind of stuck with me. He says, you didn't treat it like an athletic team. You treated it like a business, a successful business, where you fired people left because they didn't like the work.
Right.
You didn't take the time, as many businessmen evidently do, with a large staff, to talk to their workers.
Right.
Him finding himself maybe reflecting that way too. He says, but you were a businessman. You dealt with it like it was a business, and it was a successful business. That made me feel a little bit better because it really turned out to be that way.
Sure.
It's all business, and
knowing that this reunion is happening, and I'm sure Tina has been sharing with you some of the stuff that I know you're not on Facebook. I know that for a fact. But Tina's showing you some of the things that are being posted, some of the photos that are being posted, some of the images, some of the comments, some of the actual words of the post. How is it making you feel that we're finally recognizing the tradition and everything else that, this town has really become known to be, right? Because it was a no-one town before. It was a one-trick pony. It had one championship, right? 25 years or whatever it was. So how does that make you feel to know that you were a part of that and that we're celebrating? You said in the interview that you didn't take time to celebrate it during the time. It was always business. We were moving to the next game. We never really had a chance to now we're now going to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Must be special.
Well, it's funny, Telly, because
sorry, Telly's got bigger arms than me anyway. He does.
Because I don't see it as my thing alone. I don't get a great amount of personal satisfaction because it wasn't my thing alone. You'd like to play it that way. I know you are, Manoli, but
well, I'm not playing it like it's your own thing. It's not fair to say that either, right? It's not fair. But it's also not fair to say you created it.
No.
So that's not fair either.
I don't get a lot of personal satisfaction of seeing the other teams all in red. The fact that the current coaching staff is doing a great job as far as keeping the traditions alive, as have all the other previous coaches. I feel good about it, but I don't feel as though I was the guy. I don't feel that way. It was a remarkable time, and I wish it could have gone longer. Hadn't it been for Eddie, it would have gone longer.
Sure.
But so many people, I am glad to see are part of it, like yourself, and so passionate about it. It's amazing to me that there are some people like you and others that feel so strongly about that time in their life. And that makes me feel really good. I go to my doctor's appointment. I pass Jeff Herman's dentist office. Those things make me really feel good that guys are doing really well, and they think back and credit me in that regard. But as far as coming into town and thinking that, the town is so much different now than it maybe was, and it might be, but I don't see myself as the guy. And I just see so many other people involved that I had to push and yell at and scream and cajole. And
do you think? Let me put it to you this way then. Do you think Big Red football could exist, or even come to fruition, had there not been a George Conti?
Could somebody else have done it? Well, I often say that about John Amabile. He's the only guy that could have done it. What he did at Neptune.
Right.
State champion.
Could you have done that at Neptune?
No.
Right.
I would have thrown the team off.
Right. But he didn't, right?
He didn't.
He had that ability, whatever it was, to work with those boys.
One of his abilities was to make sure all his players were classified. I couldn't have done that.
Right. So you don't deny the fact that you're probably the only person that could have done.
Well, no. Point I was making was John Amabile. I said he was the only guy that could have done that at Neptune.
Right.
and then a guy named Mark Ciccatelli comes by and does it as well. So to answer your question,
Who was first?
If Amabile,
Okay.
if not me, somebody else. I mean, nobody's won a state championship since, but that's not the
No, I'm not so much.
Final grade.
I'm not talking so much about championships or anything like that. It's more about creating Big Red. I mean, it's so. Yes, there's the football aspect of it, but it's the entire concept of the town changing. Who in your, I don't know anyone that could have done that in the short amount of time from whatever to Big Red Country. Big Red Country was like, and then when it started, that whole Big Red Country, it was as if it was there for years. Like it never even, nothing else existed. So do you think your role in it was more than your action? I mean, you're saying you didn't do it alone. I get that. That's fine. But without you, there is no Big Red. That fair to say?
I don't know if anybody could have come up with that same concept.
No, I don't think so.
There's
no way.
Got to remember, winning was a big part of it.
Of course it was. Of course it was, because you were a winner and you sacrificed all these things so that players could be winners. But it was a trickle down. It was a trickle down. It had to be. We had to believe, right? We had to believe all the things that you were saying to us. So
we started believing in yourselves.
Yeah, well, that's the key. The key was you made us believe that we were killers at a certain point. I mean, it was just amazing. We were taking teams on that were, Division I players, and not just one, multiple Division I players, and we would stop them as if they were nothing.
Well, remember, all our independent games were Group 4 schools.
Right.
Middletown North, Neptune at the time.
Yeah.
Brick.
So
those were our.
Yeah.
Those are the teams that we chose to play.
Right. You wanted to play the big boys.
We wanted to play big
boys. We've spent 3 hours here, I think, maybe more. I could speak to you for another
This
24.
was supposed to be 15 minutes.
I could speak to you for another 24 hours.
I miss Mass.
I'm sorry. I'm probably 3 hours late to work right now, but that's okay.
I know what you've done.
I want to thank you for doing this.
You're a typical Greek.
Yeah.
Loyal to the end.
Well,
loyal to the end.
You said to me earlier, you're putting too much work in, and the only way I know how to do it is if I do it 100%.
I know what you've done. If this thing is a success,
this has nothing to do with me. Honestly, I'm just putting things out, and people are jumping on it. I'm just facilitating a little bit of help. That's all. Coach,
I know what you've done in the background.
I'm speaking for all your alumni, your fans, your everyone. Thank you for sitting down with me and opening up on things that aren't so easy to open up, and also listening to other people's opinion and what they think of you. That's also not so easy to listen to, but you did it with grace. You did it with a smile, a couple tears here and there, which is okay. It's good for us. And I want to thank you. So I appreciate everything. I really do.
Couldn't have done it without you. You know that. You and the boys.